Just checking. Oh, you're on sheet then. Sorry about that.
So staff, are we ready to go? Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources to order on Wednesday, November 19th. And it is a hybrid meeting. We have some members in the Capitol and others online. So I'm going to ask our staff to call the roll, please.
Albright,
Here.
Albright, present. Per. Jordan,
Jordan, present.
present. Beeman,
Beeman here.
Beeman, present. Faber,
Faber here.
Faber, present. Fisher, Fisher is excused. Green,
Here.
Green, present. Hedstrom,
Hedstrom here.
Hedstrom, present. Heinzman, Langseth,
Langseth, present.
Langseth, present. Lilly, McEwen,
Present.
McEwen, present. Moore,
More present.
Moore, present. Putnam is excused. Reese,
Reese present.
Reese, present. Scrabba, Westrom,
Present.
Westrom, present. Currently, there are 11 members present.
Thank you. With 11 members present, a quorum has been called. So the next item on our agenda is to approve the minutes for July 18th and September 16th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Reese. I will do a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We're moving on to item number 3, which is members report potential conflicts of interest regarding today's business. I'll just note that some have been posted within the online agenda. And I also will note that Representative Scrabba has just arrived so that we have 12 members present. Is there anyone who would like to announce a conflict of interest for today's business? Commissioner Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to declare conflicts of interest on 2026-168, Chitrami integrating biological carbon capture, 2026-329, Buchanan making solar work, and that is it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no others, anyone online? Seeing none online? Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is the director's report. Ms. Nash.
Okay, good morning, members. The first thing I want to do is I want to introduce you all to our two newest staff members, Ajeev Shah and Aaron Barton, who are sitting right over here. As a business analyst, Ajeev will be managing and enhancing our online proposal and grant management system, as well as providing training and technical assistance to staff, to project managers, and to members. Ajeev brings over 10 years of experience in system analysis and application support across government and private sectors. He holds an MBA from Southwest Minnesota State University in Marshall, and he is passionate about combining his technical skills with his love of the outdoors to support LCCMR's mission. Ajeev started with us in late July. Aaron Barton joined LCCMR in mid-August as our newest grant monitoring specialist. Several of you had the chance to visit with Aaron on our site visits earlier this fall, but we wanted to give the rest of you an opportunity to say hi. As a grant monitoring specialist, Aaron will support the LCCMR's funding process from proposal to project completion, including administration and oversight of funded projects. Aaron's previous experience includes administrating the U.S. Forest Service's Great Lakes Restoration Initiative program based in St. Paul, and before that, working with the Santa Fe National Forest in New Mexico. She holds an MS from the University of Michigan. So Aaron and Ajeev, we are so glad you are here and appreciate you being here at the meeting this morning so that we could all see you and say hi. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Welcome, Ajeev and Aaron. Appreciate you coming and visiting with us this morning, and also look forward to having you work on our projects with us at the LCCMR.
Great.
Ms.
Great.
Nash.
Thank you. And then I just want to tell you all how wonderful it is to have extra staff. And I want to give you some examples of how that has helped us improve the work and service that we provide. One example is with final reports. Final reports are submitted to us for approval in mid-August. Last year at this time, so in 2024, we were still working to approve final reports that had been submitted in August of 2023, a whole year beforehand. We were a year behind. Plus, we had 2 years worth of final reports that got submitted last year because we had 2 bills that were passed in 1 year. In contrast, this year, not only do we not have that backlog, but we are scheduled to close out the 2025 final reports by the end of the calendar year. So this feels terrific. Last year, our draft work plans for recommended projects were not reviewed until late in the legislative session, and then we had a big crush to get them approved or get them in acceptable format before you approve them in June. This year, we are on track to have most, if not all of them, in acceptable format before the session starts, so that legislators have them and can review them before acting on the bill. I hope that brings a smile to Senator Green's face. Our turnaround time for approving status reports and amendment requests has gone from being months-long turnaround to an average of being days. So that has really, I think, helped project managers stay on top of their projects and us help project managers get paid for the work that they've done. So that also feels fantastic. As a team, we are working well together. I think we have great rapport. We are really developing capacity. People are learning how LCCMR works and how they can best fit in and provide additional capacity. We have even been able to make progress on goals identified in the strategic plan, which is fantastic, and we'll give you an update on that later. And we are very excited about being able to tackle some tasks that we have not been able to get to for years. So we have a lot of deferred maintenance, I would say, that we need to get caught up on, and we are all very excited to do that. That all being said, we are still very, very busy. There's still an issue with being able to respond to peak demands. That was a concept Mike Reese talked to me about early on, is that we have to be able to manage those peak demands where there's a lot of work that happens in a small amount of time. We're not quite there yet, but things are going very well. So thank you all for your support of those additional staff. Couple notices for you. In case you haven't seen these in the weekly update announcements that come out to you, there are currently 5 openings on the Trust Fund Citizen Selection Committee. This is a committee that recruits, vets, and recommends candidates to the governor for citizen appointments. And then we also have 4 LCCMR member openings, and those are 2 appointed by the governor, 1 by the Senate, and then 1 by the House. And this year, Speaker Damath will be making those selections based on an agreement in the House last year. So if you know of good candidates for any and all, please direct them to either our website or the Secretary of State's website. They have a boards and commissions page where applications are uploaded, and that's where the appointing authorities look for candidates and vet those candidates from there. I wanted to give you a heads up that the second deadline for the emerging issues account request is today. And we will be using the new emerging issues evaluation criteria and process that you all approved this summer. And so this means that we will be sending you those emerging issues proposals electronically via email for review on November 25th. So that's next week. And we will need you to let us know by noon on December 3rd, which, if any of those proposals you want to select for presentation to the LCCMR. Those presentations would occur on December 10th. So it's a very fast turnaround.
I'm sorry, the 19th?
Sorry, so we are sending to your review on
Do
the
we meet the 10th or the 19th?
December 10th, I believe. Is that right? Today's the 19th, November 19th, and
Okay.
December 5th,
Gotcha.
December 10th.
Thank you.
So,
Sorry to interrupt.
no, that's okay. So we'll send to your review on November 25th. We'll need you to let us know by noon on December 3rd, which you want to select for presentation. According to our new procedures, we would need a simple majority of those responding to us in order to actually request them to present. But we also need a minimum of at least 8 members responding. That makes sense. So we would need 5 of 8, minimum, we need 5 of 8 people to select it. And then on December 10th, we would have presentations. That would be followed by a vote on all of the requests. And then because this is emerging issues funding, the recommendation goes to the governor. If the governor agrees and signs that, then the funds are available immediately. Watch please for an email from our new staff member, Erin Vartan, who is going to be running that process for us this year. As a reminder, we have 2 appropriations for the emerging issues account. One is $186,000 and the other is $2.984 million. So I know we will be receiving at least 1 request. Any questions about that? Okay, great. Then just a couple notes about today's meeting. Agenda 6B will not be taken up today. This is something that may come before you later, but not ready for today. And then we're going to swap the order that we're taking item 6. So we're going to take up item 6C before we take up 6A. And then also just want to note that we did receive a letter from the DNR that is posted as written public testimony on the meeting page and is also printed in your packets.
Thank you, Ms. Dash. I have a question from Senator Westrom.
Madam Chair, Becca, can you repeat what was not going to be taken up today? It wasn't ready. I didn't catch all of that.
Madam Chair, members, item 6B, which was the Citizen Selection Committee, that was under the agenda item of potential policy revisions for consideration.
You're welcome. Anything else, Ms. Nash? All right, I'll just note that Senator Herr has joined our meeting. Welcome, Senator Herr and Representative Skraba. Any questions for Director Nash? Thank you. So moving on, we will move on to number 5, which is completed project presentations. We have 2 presentations today. I think they're coming in the order that we have them listed. So the first one is from 2022-163, Land Use and Climate Impacts on Minnesota's Whitewater River, University of Minnesota, St. Anthony Falls Laboratory. Our presenter is Mr. Andrew Wickert. Welcome to the committee and thank you for coming to present. I see our staff is getting his presentation up for us. We do have that in our packet and we look forward to your presentation. I think we're ready. Welcome, Mr. Wickert. Would you like to introduce yourself for the committee or the commission?
Yeah, Madam Chair and members of the commission, my name is Andrew Wickert. I'm a professor in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences and at the St. Anthony Falls Laboratory at the University of Minnesota. Thank you for having me. I have to click a very tiny button to advance this, so I'm going to try to keep my attention focused. So it's always a wonderful morning to be in St. Paul. This is my hometown, so it's great to be back. And what I want to tell you about this morning is some of the work that this commission funded starting a few years ago in the Whitewater River Valley of southeastern Minnesota, with the goal of better understanding how Minnesota's river systems respond to both changes in human land use and climate, with the goals of improving our approach to both. trying to use a really unique historical record to predict the future. So the motivations that we had are that, first off, we have 3 to 15 feet of sedimentation, so sediment deposited in this river valley. And that was really catastrophic throughout the late 1800s and early to mid 20th century. So of the 5 towns in the Whitewater Valley, 3.5 were abandoned, and the remaining ones have had to develop some major infrastructural changes to adapt to the river. The reasons for that change was because of initially poor agricultural practices, which were later during the Soil Conservation Service era and the time of the Civilian Conservation Corps improved. And so we have this chance to look back to an old lesson and then look forward to how we might do things better into the future. So this site is particularly special because these questions of soil erosion happened all across the upper Midwest and other parts of the USA. But in the Whitewater Valley, this is one of the very few places where they were recorded. So between the years of 1939 and 1994, there was a set of land surveys that were performed to create river cross sections, to see how the sediment was filling in the valley bottom, how the river was changing and migrating. And those surveys also included auger borings down to the surface prior to Euro-American settlement, so approximately the 1855 surface. And the figure that you can see there is showing Dr. Stafford Happ, who started these surveys back in the 30s, sitting on the pre-settlement soil and showing at that time in a relatively small amount of distance between that soil and the pile of material that was deposited after Euro-American settlement. So what we want to do is understand these changes over time, build this record out, and use that to advance our ability to both work in southeastern Minnesota and the Whitewater Valley, which are important areas for recreation across the state, as well as to undertake these lessons and expand them into how we treat rivers as they change. And so as you can see, as I go forward, we have a number of figures showing sedimentation through the valley and erosion that happened around it, eroding the hillsides, filling in the valley bottom, and filling in areas around houses. And we also have this next example here showing the town of Fairwater, which once existed, and how the river changed the land significantly before and after. This record, however, was in scattered digital form, largely not geospatially registered, so they just had arbitrary coordinates, and was mostly in boxes in the University of Wisconsin La Crosse Library. So what we needed to do first was to take those data and turn them into something that we could communicate, which we did actually through our project partner, Dylan Blumentritt at Winona State University, and Professor Blumentritt's team worked to build this story map. We also worked with Professor Phil Larson at Mankato, at Minnesota State University, Mankato, and he and Professor Zach Hilgendorf at UW Eau Claire, who worked with him and collaborated, were able to take time series of air photos to look at changes in land use, as well as changes in the river channel patterns. And I'm happy to go back through any of these slides and just kind of moving through at pace. So we can see how the river changes over time, and then from that, we were able to recover locations of the original survey monuments and look at these cross sections and reconstruct this record. And that's what I'll be walking you through towards the end. So right here, we're seeing the locations of these valley transects that have been established, 94 of them continuously since 1939, and then going back to 1855 through the soil borings. As of the different beg pardon. So as of right now, we have managed to recover actually most of the monuments, and that's also thanks to the work of our collaborator, Lauren Sesfin. What these look like, and of course, this is a figure with just a bunch of lines on it, but you can see the vertical axis is tens of feet, and so we can see the tens of feet of sedimentation across the valley bottom, and that's formerly fertile farmland, which is now filled in the valley bottom, changed its habitat, disconnected the floodplains from the channels, and has allowed invasive species to encroach. And so one of the things that we want to do is to be able to better predict the future and understand how changes that we make in our land management practices now, especially as we see differences in precipitation regimes, are going to affect the river into the future and ideally nudge the river into helping itself recover more naturally. So as a summary of results, we have mean elevation changes here, and blues are between 2 and 2.5 centimeters per year. And this is 1855 to 1939, so a smidge under a century. And so you can imagine this is approximately meters overall. And if we just round a little bit, we can say the 2 to 2.5 is going to be about 6-7 feet of sedimentation throughout the valley. And we can see that there's some erosion possibly in some places in the uplands, but there's largely sedimentation around the whole basin. As we march forward, so this is 1939 to 1955, and what we can see is that at this point, conservation agricultural practices have started to be implemented. And so we have the beginnings of a couple places where there's less deposition or maybe a bit of erosion as the river's readjusting. And as we go a little farther forward, we continue to see reductions in the erosion in the uplands, which is great and a testament to the work of our communities and farmers, and significant deposition in the downstream end of the river as a result of ponding of that downstream end by the creation of Lock and Dam number 5, which raised what we call the base level of the river, the level to which it flows, by several feet. So what we're doing now as we're looking forward is communicating this with colleagues at the state park, at the Whitewater Wildlife Management Area. And we're working to also aid folks with related research and communicate this to the public. So over here on the right-hand side, we have a couple articles and data sets that came out from this. And so as we look forward, our goals are to strengthen these connections. We're working to study the floodplain sedimentation and working with students at Minnesota State University Mankato as well as the U to continue this record into the longer term. And one of my personal goals is then to take these records to develop and improve physics-based models to project what rivers might do into the future and help people make better decisions right now. So thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, members of the commission. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Is it doctor? Maybe Dr. Rickert?
It is Doctor, yeah,
Yeah.
but also still Mr.
Thank you for your presentation. How interesting. You received your funding in 22. Was it a 3-year process?
It started out as a 2-year process, and then it became a 3-year process when we realized the magnitude of the archives at the UW La Crosse Library. And many of these were original field notebooks, handwritten in 1930s, 1940s cursive. So they took a little while.
Well, not everyone can read cursive anymore. I've been.
Well, thank goodness I'm almost 40.
And remind me again what your budget was for your project.
Yep, our budget was $199,000.
Oh, well, you did a lot of work for $199,000.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Try to be grew up very Midwestern Lutheran, try to be thrifty.
Well, there's that. Are there any questions from the commission members on the project? I'm sorry. First Representative Scraba, and then online I'll have Shona, Commissioner Langston.
Thank you.
Representative Scraba.
Thank you, Chair. You said there were 5 communities in the valley. And what's left?
Yeah, so there were the communities of Whitewater Falls, which is now gone, Beaver, which is now gone, and there's actually been a couple books written about that. And Fairwater, which is also gone. The town of Elba is still there, but it was originally on a terrace, so in high abandoned floodplain, and the river came up so much that it became part of the active floodplain. So they had to build a levee around the town. They didn't build it in a dumb spot intentionally. They built it in a smart spot, but the river changed. And then the town of Weaver at the valley mouth, they lost about half of the town because of not because necessarily of the agricultural sedimentation, but because of the construction of the Lock and Dam. Yeah, thank you, Representative Scraba.
Thank you. Commissioner Langseth. Can you unmute your, if you're not unmuted, we can't hear you. Can staff hear her? I'm sorry.
Well, I will stall for time for just a little bit while she's working
Okay.
on that.
You could
And
type it in the chat perhaps.
Yep, and then just one extra thing to Representative Straba's note is that the reason that most of the Whitewater Valley is public land, which helped our research a lot, and I really have to thank the folk at the Whitewater WMA for that, is because most of the land was bought up at about 10% of its original value following the sedimentation, which meant farming wasn't possible. So there were, in some years, over 20 floods per year. And in a period that was actually overall dry, it was because the river channel was filling in, so like the pipe was getting smaller, not so much that the rains were getting bigger. And now we're seeing the opposite, where the rains are getting bigger, but the conduit is also eroding and getting bigger. So we're working to understand how both of those work together to regulate flooding.
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Representative Scraba. Okay, we're going to go to Commissioner Langseth, then we'll go back to Representative Scraba. Commissioner Langseth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Wickert, for your presentation. I hope you were able to spend a good amount of time in that Whitewater River Valley. It's a really beautiful location. I've spent a lot of time there myself. My question for you, so this is kind of right in my wheelhouse for my current position with the Soil and Water Conservation District is, and I've asked this question, I think it's, we're talking geological timeframes here as we've seen this erosion down into the valley. How do you detangle new, like current erosion from the tops of the hills of the bluffs versus just sediment loading from that already displaced soil in the river bottoms? Are you guys looking at that at all? That's always been a question, is like, is there a longer scale erosion happening because all that sediment moved down into the river bottom?
Yeah. So Commissioner Langseth, just to clarify, do you mean how do we look at erosion that's happening right now in year 2025 compared to the legacy of what's happened since the early? Yeah. Okay. I see you're nodding.
That's
Thank you so
exactly right.
much. Yeah. So that actually is a little bit difficult to disentangle, but one way that we can do it, if I flip back a couple slides, is that we actually see here these kind of pale to slightly reddish colors in the upland regions. And so that's showing us that in many of these areas, we're not having much new agricultural sediment added because these are the areas with smaller watersheds that are going to respond faster. And then downstream, that's where we're basically filling out our balance sheet, right? So we've created these deposits over time and they're going to slowly flush out towards the river. So I think we're seeing a significant legacy. Thank you so much. We're seeing a significant legacy here of sediment moving now towards the mouth of the river. One interesting thing that I learned from a colleague who's at Bowser is that they're seeing increased sediment loading since 2022, which was actually since the start of the war in Ukraine. And that's because of the loss of crops in Ukraine. And therefore, many of the farmers started increasing their production here in Minnesota. So there are ways in which global events actually influence the Whitewater Valley itself.
Anything else, Commissioner Langseth?
No, thank you.
Oh, okay. And Representative Scraba, anything else?
Thank you. That was kind of the direction I was going. You had stated that because of the increase of water, there was less water then, and now there's more water. So obviously there's going to be more erosion.
Mm-hmm.
And is it moving this pile closer to the mouth of the river,
Yeah.
Is that what's happening, what nature is supposed to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Representative Scraba, thank you for that question. It's exactly what nature does. So one of the things that we notice across Minnesota is that many of our rivers are becoming larger. And that's largely because we're switching from having a more snow-dominated, gentle hydrograph rainfall runoff cycle to a more rain-dominated one that can create these larger floods. And also because with that change, many farmers are needing to drain their lands and so are sending that water to the rivers more rapidly so their fields aren't swamped, which is very reasonable. So what we're seeing then is that the rivers are eroding, and that's because there's more water, and that's a natural response. And so generally nature will tend towards an equilibrium, and the rivers therefore will deposit on their floodplains, cut down and widen until they're big enough to carry, on average, the 1 to 2 year flood. And so we have those periods of higher flood frequencies when we're out of that equilibrium. And so we need to think about how hard we're kicking something in terms of either a land use impact or a precipitation impact, and how long it takes that system to respond. And actually, my group and I are submitting a couple of papers on modeling that and predicting that in the next couple of years. And these data sets are actually next couple of years, next couple of months, in fact. And these data sets have been a really big help for us to do that. And we're going to be
Thank you.
communicating that to our.
Thank you, Dr. Wickert. Our time is up. I appreciate your presentation, and there's obviously a lot of interest in it.
Thank
Good
you.
luck in continuing with the work of this presentation
Thank you,
project.
Madam Chairwoman.
Next up, we are going to have another presentation on a final report from 2022-081, Strategic Framework to Guide Local Water Storage from the Board of Water and Soil Resources. Our presenter is Henry Van Offlen. Welcome, Mr. Van Offlen, to the commission.
Welcome, Madam Chair and members. I was really happy to get the invitation to come here today. This is a project I've been working on in different capacities over the years, and the funding that you provided has really come to bring us along to a final point in this where we can move forward and probably deploy it statewide. So as soon as he's ready here, I would be glad. And the lead-in project and this last bit of discussion is really demonstrates a need for this project. We are seeing increased rainfall, eroding rivers, and there is a focus on the need for water storage on the landscape and returning water storage. That becomes a challenge for a number of reasons. But you know, this tool and the data that we generate from it will clearly help us have those discussions and move forward with more strategic discussions about where to put water storage and where to prioritize where to do it. So I'm going to just cover a little bit of background, some project results, and some next steps and opportunities as we see them, at least from the Bowser perspective. I am a clean water specialist for Bowser. Should have said that a minute ago. Working in the Detroit Lakes office, have been working in the Red River Basin for a good number of years. Worked with Rita when she was with DNR, and I had a bit of a different past with knowing Michelle Beeman there when I was a fisheries biologist for DNR. So this project is built on some existing investments the state has made, both in LIDAR, the hydro conditioning of DEMs, figuring out from LIDAR where the water flows, where every drop goes once it hits the ground, essentially. And then Bowser has invested in PTM app, which is a prioritized target and measure app, which establishes watershed water quality, identifies best management practices, literally puts where should you put practice X on the map to some degree of certainty, and then estimates the effects of those PMPs. We wanted this project to build on what we have instead of reinventing the wheel. So the history of this is LIDAR was this really cool thing that came on the scene in the I guess about 2010 or so. So this is a hillshade, right? And I'm going to show you the photo of what happened, what that landscape looks like in reality. All right. So some of us were really interested in this new technology and thought, how can we take this information and remove all those lines on the landscape and see where there used to be water stored that we've now improved the landscape on, essentially. We've done a lot of drainage. So this is where the root of this is how can we use LIDAR to identify drained wetlands? The second piece of this was how can we use LIDAR to use other water storage areas? And in the Red River Basin, we're building large impoundments like the one you see in the photo. Where is the landscape suitable for that type of water storage? Let's find those spots. But data and models are not the end of everything. We have to engage people. And that's the other part of this project, was not just producing data and models and tools, but engaging people, and in order to develop a water storage strategy. And all this fits into what I see as our conservation delivery framework that our soil and water districts are using throughout the state and watershed districts, where, you know, just sort of, we can use data, the process, people, get a strategy, but then we have to make sure it fits with the watershed plan. We have willing landowners, et cetera. Okay. Just a little bit of background. And then the next thing is, how do we evaluate water storage site to meet local goals? And normally this is done, we have a watershed like that on the left, we pick some water storage, we go pay some engineers tens of thousands of dollars to develop a model, and we get a hydrograph. This tool develops a hydrograph on site, relatively short order, so that you can have an engaging discussion with a watershed team about the effects of a project. So there's two basic components to this project, the data GIS tools and models, which identified drain basins, identified other water storage sites, derived attributes. This is a touchy mouse. Refine the hydrologic model to evaluate the hydrologic effects, and then there's a watershed engagement process. Two pieces, data and engaging people. So the GIS process, I'll go really quick on this, to identify drain basins, was basically we smooth out ditches. That gets you areas where water pool on the landscape. You see a lot of noise there. You've got to clean up the noise. And then we actually put plugs in the landscape at the outlets of all those places where water pools and filled them with water in the model. And then we can derive attributes for those things. The depth, the volume, the drainage area, all that stuff. Those are the pieces of information you need, not just a picture, but like to make the good decisions and to put into the model, how much water does it store? And really, we had some of these old tools, and now we have new ones because of this project. There is a plugin to go to ArcGIS that has a project setup, an existing roadway storage, drain basin processing, runoff analysis, screening and prioritization, really important step, preparing the hydrology in the background, developing a scenario, and then finally creating hydrographs. So that's a plugin it's available through me and through Bowser. It will eventually be publicly available. We still are doing some testing. So the other outcome besides the data and tools was the watershed engagement process. We developed a system in 2 watersheds that we worked in, 3 to 6 meetings, not this year-long meeting process to try and get to a solution, you know, really strict objectives, and let's get through this, and this in various meetings. We want this all based on watershed goals. We've invested a lot in watershed plans. Let's make sure the issues we're trying to solve are priority things. We review the water sites, we review the attributes and prioritize them, and then we evaluate the sites to develop a strategy. And here's an example from one of the watersheds. This is their watershed plan. The red area was their water storage priority areas, and those are the acre feet of storage they wanted. And then here's some actual data of what this looks like. So the first slide here, and you won't see this on the PDFs because there's animation, but the first slide is depressions. We found 5,000 of them in the yellow medicine. We found about 33,000 restorable wetlands, and then some road storage sites that were about 3,500 of them. And that's the acre feet of volume, a large quantity that we can have. And so there's an example. Look in the center there, you can kind of see the drained lake, and this tool makes it pop right out where those drain basins are. And then the road storage gets you a little bit more usually. So once we have these sites, we can ask questions with a group. What sites only have 1 or 2 landowners, right? The ones that'll probably be easier to get built if there's willing landowners. Which sites have high, medium, and low runoff type capacity? Which sites are near public land? That's one of the first questions people ask is, let's go store water on the public land. Well, we can just dial into those sites and start to evaluate them. Which sites have comparatively or relatively low water permitting issues? We added a layer to that. So we can, with a group, filter the sites based on the local priorities. And then we also finally generate hydrographs. Here's an example watershed at the outlet. This is a hydrograph. There's a large basin there. That's what this model predicts it would do to the peak. This is wetland 2 and what it does with the peak. And that wetland, due to its location on the landscape, doesn't do nearly, I mean, there's just a little tiny difference there that you can hardly see. And then here's a third wetland that the model could evaluate with project, without project. So the key here is We can do this in real time in a meeting like this, like not come back in a month or 2 months when the model is built and do these comparisons. And then, you know, we can also move downstream and do the same sort of evaluation. There are opportunities to sort of go for multi-purpose benefits here. You could see we could attributes like, is it near a Minnesota Prairie Plan? Is it near a DNR priority area, et cetera, to factor that in as what are our priority areas for water restoration. And the last thing is our next steps. We're still doing some experimenting with the tools in some more watersheds. We're continuing to work with the Yellow Medicine and the Buffalo Red. We're providing some training to internally advanced GIS users to start to use these with groups. We are hoping to derive these water storage data sets wherever we're going to redo PTM app in the future if we can get funding for that. So we've got new LiDAR data coming online. There will be we need to upgrade PTM app base data. That would be a good time to create not just BMPs, but water storage sites as our data set. And then we do have multiple watersheds now approaching us, and our staff are working with them to start to get this, use these tools as we renew and come to 5-year plan reviews for watershed plans. So with that, thank you very much. Glad to answer any questions. Went over a minute or two here.
Thank you, Henry. Are there questions from the commission? This is really interesting to me because of the basin, and I'm seeing Senator Green to begin with, and then I'll go back on to the online. Senator Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You've developed a plan, but what is your goal in the end here? Because I hear you talk about water storage, also water retention, and what concerns me as you move forward on this with these graphs that you got here is, are you taking into consideration the land use right now? Because it's very valuable land to us through there as far as our farming communities go. And I've witnessed, and I can take you to places where the goal was water retention. And once the water was retained, then the goal changed to just having a wetland retention, restoration, I should say. And so we didn't get the water retention because now that spot has been filled up with water and it's no longer good because they won't drain it down. So there's no bump. So what is the end goal here?
Madam Chair, Member Green, this project just developed the data and a process for local folks to implement water storage where there's opportunities. It helps streamline the process when a local group, based on their local watershed plan, identifies a need to, say, reduce peak flows because an area of their watershed is flooding. Or, well, that would be that's the biggest issue most of the time. Or that streams, they've had a lot of road damage in an area. Let's find some water storage, as that's what a plan will likely say is one of the solutions, is to go find water storage and to try and get that done. We're giving them tools so that they don't have to spend a lot of time and effort to identify where there's potential water storage sites, evaluate their effects. If you go back to that diagram I had with those components of getting a project implemented, willing landowners and watershed plan is really at the basis for that. This is just data, information, and a streamlined process.
Senator Green.
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify, I hear this all the time, these willing landowners, and that's not always the case. And I could list numerous ones right now. In fact, we're going through some issues right now outside of my district in the Roseau area where the landowners do not want to sell, and yet the agencies are coming forward with their graphs and whatever, and they're actually building dikes that are flooding back landowners now that are going to lose their property. So the willing landowner stuff, I'm getting tired of hearing it. And I've also could tell you where eminent domain has been threatened on people, and they've ended up selling their land or trading it for land somewhere else because the agencies are gone amok trying to maneuver around and gain land. Also, you did mention something that I like to hear, but I haven't seen a lot of movement on it, which is The state and federal governments account for about a third of the land in Minnesota that's no longer taxable. We have land everywhere. And I've watched as a refusal by both U.S. Fish and Wildlife and our own state agencies to clean out existing potholes, for instance, where sediment has come in, and then in return, turn around and threaten eminent domain to get land beside that to increase that water spot, that swamp, basically, by taking private lands. And so I'm very, very cautious and skeptical about some of the stuff that's been going on. So I'll be watching this closely. And as far as the lowland in the valley, not far from where I serve, in fact, I used to have more of it before when I was a representative. It used to be a huge lake. It was Lake Agassiz. It is low. And you are going to have flooding in certain years, but it's also some of the richest ground in the whole world. And we need that. So I hope you take that into consideration.
Thank you, Senator Green. Any response back before I go to the online question? Mr. Van Offlen, did you have anything? No? Okay. I'm going to go to Commissioner Langseth, and then our time is up, so this will be our last question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Van Offlen. And just real quickly, working with farmers and conservation is a voluntary agreement with those farmers. They're usually coming in because they want these sort of practices on their land. So really appreciate this tool. And my question to you is, does your tool take into consideration the different geological and ecological aspects of the state? Like the prairie pothole region versus our karst region. We typically don't have a lot of ponds in southeast Minnesota. Granted, I know it's really important to have water storage, but just wondering if that tool takes that into consideration at all.
Mr. Van Offlen.
Thank you, Madam Chair and member. I think it's going to be really interesting to deploy this in the southeast part of the state, if we can find a small watershed area to pilot it. The wetland signatures are found where there is drainage of wetlands. If you didn't have drainage of wetlands, then you're not going to find them, right? But the road raise piece of this is if we look for areas with topography suitable for storing water where we could build an embankment around, we should pick up more of those in that part of the state. So it'll be interesting to deploy it there to see how it works. There are a few little dials inside the tool to kind of tweak things and try and pick things up. But I think it'll be really, really interesting to use down in some other areas of the state. Wherever we have used it, which is a wide variety of very flat areas to steeper areas, it is picking up the signatures for water storage.
Thank you. I'm going to take one more question from myself, and that is this a tool that has been mainly used by local watershed districts, not state agencies, or would that not be true?
Madam Chair, yes. We developed these tools a number of years ago. This project enabled us to upgrade them, bring them into the new technology that's available, the new versions of the best software that we have to do this. We are now just starting to use it. And we did have some representation by other agencies and have had discussions with them about the tools. So, but given our basis in producing this landscape level stuff in PTM app, it just makes sense to add this on the Bowser side of things. Yeah, and we have given presentations to, like I just did a local northern region interagency meeting where I presented this information. So.
Right. And of course, the watershed districts work with the state agencies, Bowser, MPCA, and DNR with their projects. I see Representative Scraba has one more question, and this is very interesting to us all. Thank you.
I apologize, Madam Chair, but real brief. I understand the tool. I think the tool is an agency-wide, it's really good. But when we start getting activist groups getting this tool and trying to create this watershed that they want and not what's existing and the landowners, will this tool stand up in court?
Mr. Van Offlen?
Madam Chair and member, this is a technically sound approach to identify wetlands drained wetlands, identify water storage sites, and also to evaluate what those sites will do. It is not a HEC HMS model. It is not an HSPF model. It is a, let's get an idea of, will this site reduce flood peaks more likely than this site with a reasonable amount of accuracy as a planning level tool. I don't, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a planning level tool, sorry.
Thank you to the presenter for your time, and I appreciate the information that you shared with us.
Thank you.
Good luck with the project as it moves forward. Moving on, our next item on our agenda is item number 6. We're going to C, is that correct?
6C, yep.
6C, which is a DNR Commissioner approval of non-state land acquisitions. And this is something that Becca will lead. So Director Nash.
Great. So this is a potential policy revision for consideration, and this is related to statute 116P17, which requires an entity acquiring land with ENRTF funding to receive written approval from the Commissioner of the Department of Natural Resources before the land is acquired. There are some exceptions in that statute, specifically for easements that will be held by Bowser, for land acquired within the Metropolitan Regional Recreational Open Space System using Met Council funds from ENRTF, and then also when the specific acquisition is named in the appropriation. So the statute requires that the DNR Commissioner approve the acquisition if it's a high priority for the Commissioner, if it meets objectives and criteria identified in the applicable acquisition plan for the intended management status of the property, or if the land is otherwise identified by the Commissioner as high priority. DNR has questioned whether it is appropriate for the DNR to evaluate priority of land being acquired by local units of government, by nonprofits, and by other state agencies when the land is not being funded by the DNR, nor will it be managed by the DNR. The requirement has also created confusion and significant timing delays with some projects. In the memo, I've provided some examples, recent examples of when that approval has need to be sought. And it includes even, conservation easements that are going to be on private land and those easements being held by nonprofit organizations. So the LCCMR may want to consider if changes to the statute are warranted. Just a little history on the requirement. The DNR approval of acquisitions was added to statute in 2010, and it only originally applied to lands being acquired for conveyance to the DNR. So there were certain circumstances where one entity was going to be acquiring land for eventual conveyance to the DNR. And so the statute was intended to make sure that the DNR had pre-approved that acquisition so that they were going to accept the land after it was acquired. In 2013, the statute stipulating the restrictions on acquired land with ENRTF was revised so that an interest in real property transfers to the state if the interest holder fails to comply with the terms of the project, or if the restrictions are placed on the land will prevent it being used as intended. So when ENRTF funds are provided to a project, they must put a deed restriction on the property that says this land may not be transferred or altered. It must be maintained to be in its intended use for conservation. That language was added to that to say that, and if it doesn't follow those rules, the land may revert to the state of Minnesota. So when that change happened, they also changed the DNR approval statute to expand it for any lands that were acquired with ENRTF funds, not just DNR lands. So in some respects, it might have been intended to be like a pre-vetting of those lands that might eventually at some point, if things don't go as we hope, end back in DNR ownership. I don't know that it is serving that purpose at this time. In 2014, an exception was added to carve out the acquisitions specifically identified in appropriation law. And in 2017, an additional carve out was made for the lands within the Metropolitan Regional Parks system. The LCCMR does do review of land acquisitions through its proposal and work plan review process. The proposal collects information about the land that's going to be acquired, including how the land was selected. In addition to providing information about the overall project and opportunity need and solutions like we do for all projects, land acquisitions have to, like I said, describe the criteria and the decision-making process used to rank and prioritize proposed lands. They have to list and provide copies of all the adopted state, regional, or local natural resources plans in which the lands included in the parcel list are identified for the acquisition purposes proposed. They have to provide a parcel list showing which lands they're intending to acquire and describe the site significance of that property. They have to confirm that the lands to be acquired are not already in public ownership. They have to confirm that the county board approval will be obtained for lands conveyed to the state. And then we also do ask for parcel maps and aerial photographs of those lands. So that information is all available to members while you are reviewing proposals. And then, as I said, also should be in there as we're doing work plan approval. Also just want to note that the DNR does do review of all acquisitions for non-state agencies because the DNR sets and maintains acquisition procedures and technical standards that are required for land acquisition. These have to do with appraisal standards, surveys, environmental contamination screening. And the DNR grant unit, as part of our contract with them, does review to make sure that the entity receiving funding is complying with those procedures and standards. So that is separate from the conversation we're talking about now that's in statute. So that would continue on regardless of what you do related to the statute we're talking about today. So if the LCCMR believes that the DNR commissioner approval of acquisitions as required in 116P17 is necessary and appropriate, the LCCMR could take no action today. Or the LCCMR could consider revising the statute to give the DNR commissioner a little bit more time to make that determination. Right now, the statute gives them only 10 days before an acquisition closes to bump it all the way up to the commissioner's office to get a reading on it, and then to proceed with the acquisition. So if it does stay, if you do think it's appropriate that the commissioners continue to serve this purpose, having at least 30 days would be appreciated. If the LCCMR determines that the commissioner approval of acquisition is not needed or appropriate, options could include recommending to the legislature to retire the statute, just get rid of it, or to revert it to the previous form, which provided the scope of only pre-approving lands that were going to be conveyed to the DNR for management. If you choose any of these revisions to statute, what staff would do is we would prepare bill language for your consideration at our next meeting. And if you did want to adopt that, that would be a recommendation to the legislature. So it would be either included in the appropriations bill that you are working on or passed as a standalone bill, but it would still require 11 affirmative votes.
Thank you, Director Nash. So just to recap, right now, if a recipient of an appropriation from the trust fund acquires an interest in real property, they have to go to the DNR, and within 10 days, the DNR has to act or make a recommendation on that. And so the question before us is, should we continue that process as it is in statute now? Or we could remove the requirement of DNR approval of acquisitions, or we could make it so it only applies to DNR acquisitions, or we could revise the deadline for approval from 10 days to 30. And so today I'd like to have a little discussion, get some consensus around any of those, perhaps have some action on a vote. And then, as Becca said, we would bring that back on December 10th with the bill language for a statute change. Clear as mud. I see Commissioner Beaman as the first hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question. So this statute provision only applies to acquisitions with trust fund money. Do we know, is there a similar statute for DNR to approve, a requirement for DNR to approve other acquisitions that they would then receive, maybe through legacy money or through some other appropriations? And the reason I ask is because there might be similar rationales for those, and I would want to know the rationale in other situations.
Thank you, Director Nash.
Madam Chair, I might ask Catherine Sherman-Hone from the DNR, who's joining us from Zoom, to turn on her camera. There she is. I don't believe LSOHC has this requirement, but maybe Catherine can confirm.
To the DNR representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name, for the record, is Catherine Sherman-Hohen. I am the agency-wide grants manager, and I manage the pass-through grants unit for the DNR. The LSOHC does not have similar statute regarding any land purchased by Outdoor Heritage Fund.
Thank you. To the Commissioner, did you have any?
I guess my follow-up would be, is DNR, so your memo says the DNR has questioned whether it's appropriate for them to continue doing this. Would they like us to, or would they prefer to have this amendment? And if so, could they bring, legislation forward on that? Or is it really more appropriate for us to do it because it's our funding, if there is to be a change?
Madam Chair, my thought is that yes, the DNR would welcome this. I can ask Catherine to confirm that. I think that the idea is that this is just kind of honoring the LCCMR process, by allowing LCCMR members to weigh in on it. But even if LCCMR didn't support it, a legislature could still make that change during the legislative session. So it's just, allowing the members who are closest to the issue to be able to weigh in on it. But Catherine, do you want to confirm the DNR's position on this?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Director, Commission member. Because this is LCCMR statute, the DNR stance is that we would have no trouble administering this change for any of these changes to happen.
Thank you.
So we defer to, this is the LCCMR statute.
Thank you. So neutral on it is the way it sounds to me. I have Commissioner Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question and a point to make. The question is, how does all organizations need authority or the proper authority in whether it's a board or whatever it is to put forward a grant proposal, correct? And that includes the DNR. So once the proposal is submitted, the commissioner or their designees are already approving the request, correct?
Director Nash.
Madam Chair and members, so the DNR does provide us a list of approved proposals. So those are all vetted through the Commissioner's office. I can say that for DNR. I don't exactly know some of the other state Bowser's process, for example. So yes, presumably there's buy-in from the beginning for these acquisition programs. I'd also say that there is an amendment process too, so that additional parcels may be added on to a project later on after the proposal stage, because things do change. Some landowners end up not accepting a deal because they don't like fair market value, for example. So then you kind of go down your list to find the right, and then another opportunity may come up that fits with the program that's described, so that there's a possibility that lands could be acquired. For DNR acquisition, presumably there is a process internally to make those decisions, so that there's already been sort of a blessing before it gets to us.
Mr. Reese.
Yeah, so that was kind of a point there too, that they already have approval to put the proposal in to acquire, even though there might be amendments along the way. The second point is, what happens if the commissioner denies a outside or local land acquisition because it's gone through the legislature, it's been signed by the governor, and then the commissioner are they really going to deny it? And so then why do we have it? So I guess my inclination is that we should go to just removing that whole provision or recommend that we remove that.
Thank you. I will note that in the current statute, it says that acquisitions specifically identified in appropriation laws are not subject to commissioner approval. So it could be that legislatively, those, would that mean those that are approved by the legislature? Does that what that mean?
My interpretation is that, yes, if you're naming the specific appropriation in appropriation law, then it's getting it enough, in the public so that there's a process and people would identify if there's an issue. Truth be told, we don't do that very often because that's often a risky predicament when you just are asking funding for a specific land, because things don't always work out as intended. And so usually people are asking for funds and are providing multiple parcels. For example, if that first one doesn't work out, they have their next tier priority.
Okay, so just to reiterate, Commissioner Reese, you would support removing the requirement for DNR approval of acquisitions. Is that correct?
Yes, but there's kind of a nuance there that the DNR has already submitted a proposal for that acquisition that has gone through approval process already.
Thank you. So continuing discussion, I see Senator Green and then Representative Scraba. Senator Green.
If I understand it right, excuse me, Madam Chair, the reason I think for it, and I probably wasn't here when it went in, I mean, I was in the legislature, but if you look at the way the commissioner is putting this forward, there's a whole group of land. And so when we approve lands like in the LCCMR bill, or even in the legacy bill, for instance, there's multiple millions of dollars for a certain amount of acreage, and we don't even know where it's at. Okay. So for instance, let's pick a county, Beltrami County, which is already 80% non-taxable land. There could be portions within Beltrami County that are in this huge list that they have that may or may not come up depending on where they get the land. And so if we're not going to have an approval of some kind in there, we could be approving land that maybe is not beneficial for the state to own. And so I think that the policy that is not a bad policy. And if you want to extend it to 30 days, you can. I'm wondering if the extending it to 30 days is going to be beneficial. I mean, the 10-day turnaround, I find it hard to believe in my own right that the DNR is going to not approve most of them anyway. But if the DNR has not come forward and said 10 days is just not enough, I don't really see the problem. It would be a quicker turnaround on the 10 days than if you extend it to 30. That makes sense? So I don't know if we really need to do anything right now. And if we did want to change the, in the future, you can put a bill forward anytime. Doesn't have to be by December 10th.
Thank you, Senator Green. Representative Scraba.
One of the comments that Director Nash made a statement that if parts of the deal aren't, if the landowner that was doing the deal didn't follow through on it, then the DNR automatically gets the land. Say that part again, how that works.
Director Nash.
Yeah, so oftentimes when entities are requesting acquisition funds from us, they provide a parcel list.
Right.
So we see that at the proposal stage. These are the lands that they're looking at acquiring. They often include a list that's greater than they would ever have funding to accomplish, because you can only buy land for fair market value, for appraised fair market value, for example. And so if you go to your top priority project, you've done an appraisal and the landowner doesn't like that value, then you say, okay, then I will move to the next in the list and see if I can strike a deal with them.
But my point then is,
Representative Scraba.
I'm sorry, my point is this. If you agreed, everyone agreed to it, and like, yep, that's it, we're going to do it.
Yep.
And then the DNR commissioner said, nope, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes.
now the deal is still going, but the person's not getting what they want because the DNR said, we're out. My concern is this a taking? Is this a way around? Is this the Fifth Amendment? Are they going to try to take land and not subterfuge, but it just doesn't seem clean, what we're talking about right now. And maybe I'm out of my league right now, but it just doesn't seem, whether you got 10 days is more than enough, because this isn't like the first time it came across their desk. They've seen this thing a million times. It's not going to just show up one day and say, hey, when we're acquiring land with LCCMR money or legacy money, whether the DNR is involved, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but this has been vetted by different groups all the way through. So why isn't 10 days enough?
Director Nash? Any comment back?
So as for your first point about the taking, I almost consider it as like a reverse taking, because you could have, like Commission Member Reese said, you could have the LCCMR approved it, the legislature funded it. You as an entity went out and spent money on appraisals and surveys and title and reached an agreement with the landowner. The landowner said yes. And then 10 days before you're supposed to close, the commissioner says, no, you can't proceed with that. So it seems like you have two entities. One is agreeing to sell, one is agreeing to buy, and then a third party 10 days before the closing comes in and says, no, you can't do that. And it's an entity that isn't even related to your funding or your organization. And so that's why I think it's almost flip of maybe what you were saying. I don't know if that helps.
Representative Scrabble?
I'm sorry, Chair, perhaps, but with that explanation, I'm tending to go with what Michael's saying. Why are they even involved? If it's already been done.
That's the question. That is the question.
Yeah. So,
Commissioner
thank
Reed?
you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the points raised, if a community or municipality wants to purchase a space land for a campground, they come to the LCCMR, we approve it, it goes forward. And why would the DNR commissioner be involved in that process at that point? I guess that's my point. I don't mind if the commissioner wants to approve their own purchases, but I think they should be outside of any other outside entity. Or if they want to approve the state agency's purchase, that's fine. But I think from a municipality standpoint or NGO standpoint, I don't really see that DNR should have a role in that.
Thank you. Let me just remind you from the statute. It says the commissioner shall approve acquisitions under this section only when the interest in real property is, one, identified as a high priority by the commissioner and meets the objectives and criteria identified in the applicable acquisition plan for the intended management status of the property, or two, is otherwise identified by the commissioner as a priority for state financing. So there are a couple of caveats that narrow the acquisitions that are reviewed. So apparently not all acquisitions are reviewed. Would that be fair to say, Director Nash, or are they all reviewed?
All non-state acquisitions would need to be reviewed by the commissioner.
Okay.
Except for the Met Council.
And Bowser conservation easements. So follow up, Commissioner Reese?
Yeah, I interpret that differently.
Okay.
I interpret it as Director Nash indicated that the commissioner is supposed to not approve or cannot approve projects unless they follow those criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they view it as not a high priority, then they are directed to disapprove it.
Thank you. Senator Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Senator Hurd was first, but as long as I
I'm
got the
sorry, I'm
microphone,
just-
I'll run with it. I'm thinking about this, and the more we're discussing it, I think that Commissioner Reese is right. And because what pops into my head is something that's happened in the past, which is the DNR did not approve some sales from local governments because they actually wanted the land themselves. And so, yeah, I think we could go ahead and get rid of this. I'll write that bill.
Senator Hurd.
how frequent is the problem arise with the 10-day limits in the past?
Director Dash?
Madam Chair, I just provided a sample of 4 recent examples from 2019, 2020, and 2023. So, you know, 1 to 5, I guess, a year maybe. And that's also a little bit part of it is can be sporadic. It can be several in 1 year and nothing in another year. And so it does, like I said, kind of create some confusion for people.
Senator Her, any follow-up?
Yeah, another follow-up is that is 30-day would be plenty of time, right? Like they didn't choose 15 or 20.
Director Nash?
Madam Chair, the number we discussed with DNR was 30 days. And I'm just looking at Catherine, and I think I'm seeing her nod that was the preferred alternative if
it weren't removed, that would be the next best thing.
Exactly. Removing as the top, restricting it as the second, keeping it as it is, but extending the timeline is the third preferred
Thank you.
option.
Senator Her?
So let me just to be clear for myself, let's see, if we approve 30 days, we're done with it and it doesn't need to go to legislation later.
Director Nash?
Madam Chair, all 3 of those revisions would be a recommendation for a statute change to the legislature. So the only thing that doesn't need to go to them is not doing anything.
Right, it would
Keeping it
change
as
the
is.
language.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Beaman?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually looking at the description of what the very original legislation was back in 2010, which I actually think is important to go back to. That was requiring DNR's approval, if I understand this right, for acquisitions using trust fund money, where the intention from the beginning is that the land is going to be conveyed to the DNR to manage.
Yes.
If I'm DNR, I want to know that, and I want to approve it if I'm going to have to manage this land. So if Trust for Public Land has the cash and they're buying it here, and the idea is it's going to go to a WMA, I think it's entirely appropriate for DNR to weigh in upfront and approve that or not. Because if they say, we don't have the resources to manage that or whatever, we're always saying,
Yep.
we shouldn't be acquiring land if the agencies can't manage it, right? So I think that original purpose is important. And if having 30 days is a good timeline for them, great. I think what's problematic is what was added in 2013, which is to suddenly have DNR weighing in on the appropriateness of acquisitions when they're not involved, when it's not coming to them, it's not, at least intentionally. They sort of sweep it in because, well, at some point, if the grant isn't managed right, or there's a failure to comply with some term, it might revert to the state. That's a pretty speculative and unlikely event. And I think it's overreach to say, well, because of that potentiality, DNR should look at everything. So my proposal would be to try to put language back to what was in 2010 version. Let DNR weigh in on its projects that from the beginning are proposed to convey to them, but take them out of the approval process for projects that don't involve them up front.
Thank you. Additional discussion? I see Senator Westrom and then Representative Scraba. Senator Westrom?
So Madam Chair, can you remind us what action would be taken here? Are we taking final action here today, or are we just discussing it?
Yes.
I guess I'm just still a little unclear of what we're actually trying to do. Pare it back, or I'm not. First, I was thinking the DNR wanted to have more oversight. Reading the memo, it makes it look like they're questioning whether it should apply to everything, and I don't think it should. But can you just clarify, you or the director, what's our action going to be?
Yeah, I'll let Director Nash respond to that, and then if there's anything I want to add, I will.
Madam Chair and members, I think today is to get some direction from you on which of, we put forward 3 options, and I can review those, but
we've had fourth option perhaps with
That is one of the options, actually.
Commissioner Beaman.
Yeah,
Okay.
Commissioner Revens is one of the options. So we put forth three options. We'd like an indication from you which one you're interested in pursuing. And then we would bring back bill language for you to look at the next meeting. So you would actually be voting on it at the next meeting. Today is just the indication of which direction you'd like to go. The three options were to just get rid of the statute, retire the statute. The second option was to restrict it, convert it back to its original intent. And then the third is just to keep it as is, but extend the time that the DNR has to do the review.
Director Nash,
Senator, mhm.
Madam Chair, who spoke last, getting back to the original intention.
Yes.
Is that correct? The
Director Nash?
2010 law
Correct.
was more focused on land that the DNR was going to acquire, or from the beginning, it was land that the transaction was going to end up at the DNR. Is that a correct summary of the way the law in 2010 was was intended and used that way?
Director Nash?
I just want to make sure that I'm getting this right. Yeah, DNR approval of acquisitions was added to statute in 2010 and originally only applied to lands acquired for conveyance for DNR management. So I think, some of that could be a direct acquisition from DNR, but I think really the intent, because they already have internal processes to vet and approve lands that they are directly acquiring, I believe the original intent was to get approval from the DNR if a third party is going to go out and buy land for future conveyance to the DNR for management. And so it made sense to add in a step that those would be pre-vetted by the DNR before.
Okay.
Senator
so
Westrom?
Can I ask Commissioner Michelle? Is it Michelle? Did you speak last?
Yes, it was Commissioner Beaman that made that point.
So what's your conclusion? Is your thought to go back to more what 2010 was? And because I kind of think that's where I lie too, is it really should only pertain to land going to the DNR, or if from the outset a group is buying it with the intention in a year or 5 years, we're going to be moving it to the DNR. That might make sense for the DNR to look at that. But to me, that's really where it should be limited. But give me your thoughts as well. I'm just
Commissioner Beaman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Westrom, yes, that was what I was suggesting would be the better scope, is to go back to that original intent in the 2010 legislation that had DNR vet and approve proposals that would be acquisitions that wouldn't, from the beginning, intend to go to the DNR for management, whether it's they're acquiring it or a third party is, but knows that they're going to be giving it to DNR management. So it sounds like that is what's being labeled option 2
Yes.
from the staff.
Yeah.
And if that was, I would happy to move that if that's what people wanted.
I still have a little bit more discussion and then we'll wrap this up. so
And
we can
Madam
move-
Chair, just to conclude and then
Senator
move on
Westrom.
to that's where I'm kind of probably leaning towards great comfort. I don't think we should expand it to the DNR having overbroad authority over, if it's a local unit of government or a nonprofit buying land that's going to be a wetland restoration, or what are they? These areas that have kids come and visit them. I forget what they call them, like
Playgrounds and,
Wolf Ridge.
and environmental nature centers, yeah.
Environmental centers.
Yes, yeah.
That are not ever going to be DNR land
Right.
likely. And so I just don't think we should be having the DNR involved in that. So
Thank you.
that's where I'm lying. I think option 2 is where we should direct.
Thank you. I
back
have
to.
another hand with Commissioner Reese.
Yep,
And
thank you,
then
ma'am.
I'll go online with
Favor.
Faber.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to concur with Commissioner Beaman and her approach on this, but I would also ask the legislators in the room to consider that perhaps that when there's land conveyance like that from funding that came from the LCCMR, purchase of private land that is on the tax rolls, and the conveyance to the DNR, which removes it from the tax rolls, that there should be other checks and balances in that process, both local and perhaps even at the legislature. So for the legislators taking or developing the bill, I would encourage them to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go online to Dr. Faber and then back to Representative Scrobber. Dr. Faber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just thinking about the timeline here. If you wonder why 2010 was important, that was, remember, 2 years after the Clean Water, Land, and Legacy Amendment passed. And so what was happening was the DNR's own process for acquiring lands was taking too long. So then organizations like Pheasants Forever stepped in, and they're doing the majority of the land purchases for Lesage Sams. So then that was completely with the intent that that land would just pass through Pheasants Forever's ownership, if you will, prior to being conveyed to the DNR. And then obviously it seems like in 2017, something was changed, was added to the statute then that lands for getting money from the LCCMR and the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund should go through a similar process. And so I'm completely supportive of Commissioner Reese and Commissioner Beaman and so on, that we should just take that bid off, because the chance that's going to happen, we can't worry about that or whatever. And remember, this has to go back to the legislature and then bring it up and pass the change to the statute. Is that correct, Commissioner Director Nash, right?
Thank you, Dr. Faber. Director Nash, did you want to comment? He's asking, does it go back to the legislature? Yes, it does.
Correct. Yes, this would be a recommendation to the legislature to make the change.
So I'm going to go to Representative. I'm sorry,
I just wanted to follow up and say that I'm completely supportive of that too. I don't think the DNR needs to be involved in lands that somehow have some sort of a slim chance. If that's not the main idea, then our thing is, if we've approved it, we want that money to go and purchase that land for said private, whoever it is, or nonprofit. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Scrub, and then we'll wrap this discussion up. And if anyone else has a question, raise your hand now and we'll get you on the list. Representative Scraba.
Thank you, Chair Albrecht. I was going to tell Commissioner Beaman right away, yeah, let's go that way. And then Commissioner Reese brought up the other part, the part where we all agree on one thing and then bring in the other thing to make it just a little muddier. But I agree with what you want to do. So hopefully we'll go forward with this. I think the intent, the DNR has way more than they need to do already, and why give them more to do? So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Chair Albrecht. I just want to confirm, and I want to ask the DNR to put them on the record that they are they do not oppose this. They are neutral to supportive of this motion.
Ms. Catherine Sherman-Hone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commission member, we do not oppose this, and we can absolutely administer it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to know the DNR can administer less work.
Yes, yes.
And Senator Herr.
Just curious, like in 2010, I mean, Commissioner Beaman make very good sense, but I wasn't here in 2010. Then I was here and start to understand the process of legislation in 2013. So what costs in terms of history, what is there a situation or circumstances that cause legislation, a DNR, LCCMR, whatever, to take the step to change the law for 2013?
Director Nash.
Madam Chair and members, I have some personal memory about this, so I can share with you about that. And I think Member Faber was getting at it, was that there was starting to be an acceleration of some land acquisition, in particular land acquisition by parties who were going to acquire the land and then intend it to be transferred to the DNR for their management. And so this was a way to make sure that those lands that those third parties were going out to get were actually in fact, the DNR's priorities, and the DNR was willing to accept ownership of it. So that's my understanding of where this came about.
Any follow-up?
Exactly.
No follow.
All right. So I'm gonna wrap this discussion up. I don't necessarily need a vote today, but I do want to give consensus to staff on what to bring forward on the 12th. And what I'm hearing from you all, and you can tell me if this is not correct, is that we're looking at reverting back to that 2010 language whereby the DNR only was weighing in on acquisitions that were ultimately going to be conveyed to the state, and the DNR is the land manager for the state. Am I hearing that correctly? And just some nods around the room, or
Yes.
raise your hand if you want something different. Senator Westrom.
Madam Chair, are you opposed to a vote? I think
No, I'm not
throwing,
opposed to it.
having Commissioner Beaman just offer the motion, so we have a record of it. It's not gonna be a final decision, but to give staff guidance that they bring back a proposal, consistent with item 2 would be something I think would be just a cleaner way to move forward and get consensus and.
Thank you for that recommendation. We'll do that.
It says action, so let's vote.
Commissioner Beaman, would you like to make a motion?
Sure, Madam Chair. I would move that staff go forward with preparing, if I get this wording right, what they have as option 2, which would be to move the legislation more consistently back to the 2010 format, and also add in a 30-day review timeline for the commission, for the DNR commissioner in that process, and that will be brought back to us in December for a vote. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So Commissioner Beaman moves to recommend to the legislature that statute 116P.17 be revised to only apply to DNR acquisitions or conveyances, and revise the deadline for approval to 30 days. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you for that complete.
Thank you. Is that clear to everyone what the motion is? Do I need a- No. I don't need a second. And so all those in favor, do we need to have a roll call because we're online?
Yep.
So I'm going to have staff call the roll on this motion.
Albright.
Yes.
Albright, yes. Her.
Yes.
Her, yes. Jordan.
Yes.
Jordan, yes. Beaman.
Yes.
Beaman, yes. Faber.
Faber, aye.
Faber, yes. Fisher is excused. Green.
Yes.
Yes. Hedstrom.
Hedstrom, yes.
Hedstrom, yes. Heinzman. Langseth.
Langseth, aye.
Langseth, yes. Lilly. McEwen.
Yes.
McEwen, yes. Moore.
More yes.
Moore, yes. Putnam is excused. Reese.
Yes.
Reese, yes. Westrom.
Yes.
Westrom, yes. Scraba.
Yes.
Scraba, yes. Currently 13 members, yes. 0 no.
That motion prevails. Thank you all for a very good discussion. I always say that all of the brains around the table have something to share, and makes our work a whole lot easier when we all have good ideas that we bring to the table. So thanks for that discussion. So we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is 6A, the conflict of interest. And we have about half an hour, 30 minutes for this discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Nash.
Okay, I have to move fast. Okay, so the LCCMR has a conflict of interest policy for members as part of its adopted operational procedures. The policy is grounded in state statute and was updated in 2023 in response to a statutory change that restricts a member's ability to vote on a recommendations package if the recommendations, quote unquote, relate to an organization with which the member has a direct personal financial interest. Following concerns being raised during several LCCMR meetings, staff was asked to solicit input from members about the conflict of interest policy so the committee could consider possible adjustments to the policy. Based on survey results, staff have developed some initial options for modifications of statute, policy, or procedure to address issues identified. So we're hoping that during today's meeting, you can provide direction to staff about which, if any, of the options you would like to pursue further, so staff can develop those options or refine them, again, to bring back to you at a future meeting for your adoption. You have in your packets a copy of the conflict of interest policy in its entirety for reference, and that does include the statutes. You also have responses to the survey in their entirety, and then you have a memo with options. And I'm thinking, just to kind of ground us in some of the issues that came up, we can go through the policy survey responses. And I might do some abbreviation here, but call out some areas of interest. So I'm going to switch over to the results of the policy and say that starting with question 1, more than 5 of the 10 members who responded believe that our conflict of interest policy is not 100% clear. We had a comment that the policy is clear, but the recent changes in how the policy is applied is unclear. And a comment also that it does not make sense to have multiple levels of a conflict of interest. This person believes that you should either have a conflict or you don't have a conflict. Question 2 was asking about responsibility of determining conflicts. It's a member's responsibility to come forth about potential conflicts of interest, but there might be questions about, is it or isn't, and what kind of conflict is it, and what are the ramifications of that type of conflict? Who is best suited to resolve those issues? 6 of the 10 members believe that a combination of the member and nonpartisan staff is appropriate for resolving those kinds of questions. One member noted here and another noted later on in the survey that it does make sense that in rare situations that the issue may need to be bumped up to the full commission or to a committee for discussion and a vote. Question 3 was related to paragraph A of the statute. And that statute says that members may not participate in a commission decision relating to an organization in which the member has a financial interest. Paragraph A by itself has been generally understood to restrict participating on a decision specifically about the organization or its proposal, but not to restrict voting on the final recommendations package. We asked members' thoughts about that. 7 out of 10 believe that those restrictions are appropriate. One comment was added that defining the organizational boundaries of a conflict was important. In my language, the example I give is that if a member is a state employee, do they have an interest with proposals from all state agency or just from proposals from their own state agency? That's kind of what we're talking about when defining the organizational boundaries of a conflict. Another commenter said that they believe that indirect and direct costs should not be treated differently. There's some comments that are kind of sprinkled throughout. I'm not going to repeat those once they've been stated. So if you are reading this, you will see some of these comments continue, but I will not call them out. Another commenter in this question suggested that the LCCMR might want to consider passing 2 packages, one that contains conflict of interest and another package that does not contain conflicts of interest. Question 4 was about the term direct personal financial interest that appears throughout our policies. We asked members how they would define that. Over half of members thought having a direct personal financial interest meant receiving some payment, whether it's salary or wages. There was clear agreement on that. Per diem, there was less clear agreement, and potential reimbursement of costs from an organization, there was less agreement on that. Nobody considered having a past financial interest as constituting a direct personal financial interest in an organization. 4 out of 10 thought a potential future conflict of interest should be considered. One member mentioned having any kind of contract, whether it's for salary or wages or not, should be considered a direct personal financial conflict of interest. also mentioned that having a management plan is key. And in my words, I will say that a management plan is a written document that's been developed by nonpartisan staff and legal counsel that provides those organizational boundaries for the member and also addresses any other complex conflict of interest issues that that individual might have. One member under this question made a comment that they thought a financial conflict of interest should only be defined as directly receiving funding from an ENRTF grant. So agreement in some, disagreement about others, and maybe some confusion, I think, is kind of the theme that we're seeing in some of these. Question number 5 was about defining indirect personal financial interest. 8 of the 10 respondents defined indirect personal financial interest as having a family relationship with a proposer or a staff or board member of an organization. 6 of the 10 considered a potential future indirect financial relationship as being an indirect personal financial interest. 4 of the 10 thought a current unfunded collaboration should be considered an indirect personal financial interest. 1 person thought that having a past relationship or being friends with someone in the organization represents an indirect personal financial interest in an organization. Some comments were made under this question. One was that being a supervisor of a proposer, having a position of authority over the proposer should be considered here. Also a comment maybe about process, that these things need to be defined prior to and during a member's term. That was an interesting comment. Another comment was that a member believes that we are confusing potential for bias with financial conflict. So we're conflating those two concepts. Question 6 related to paragraph B of the law. This is the paragraph that was added on in 2023 and prohibits members from voting on the final recommendations package when the vote, quote unquote, relates to an organization in which they have a direct personal financial interest. We asked members what relates to an organization in this context means. 8 and 9 out of 10 of the members considered that action to relate to an organization in this context, meaning that the organization is the applicant or the recipient of funds. 5 or fewer believed in some of the other conditions qualified. I'm just maybe going to skip through this for expediency's sake. One person mentioned for this one, they actually do not agree with the law. Another said the premise of the overall policy appears to be flawed. And then we've got some repeated comments from elsewhere. As for paragraph B, the one that prohibits members from voting on the final recommendations package if it quote unquote relates to an organization in which they have a direct personal financial interest. This has generally been understood to mean that if a project is included in the recommendations package, and if that project relates to an organization with which the member has a direct financial interest, even if the organization itself is not receiving funds, the member would not be eligible to vote on the package. And so we asked what were members' thoughts on that restriction. 5 indicated it is too strict. 3 said it's appropriate. 1 was undecided. And then one of the comments also seemed to say that it was not appropriate. We asked 2 open-ended questions. Were there any other issues or concerns about the policy that the commission should address? We had some very good comments here. I'll just try to summarize. Again, financial conflict should not mean exclusion. There should be no withdrawing of declarations after they've been made. A note that we need to address potential conflicts of applicants commenting on other applications, which is a little outside of LCCMR, but still an important issue for this person. Another comment was that the 2023 conflict of interest changes made our policy more arbitrary, less objective, and much harder to follow. Commenter C here mentioned that in terms of defining conflicts. A governing board member, whether paid or not, should not be allowed to discuss or vote on a proposal from that organization. Thinking that if somebody's just a volunteer, it may or may not be a conflict. And then noting just that the complicated nature of conflicts and a preference not to over legislate on this issue. Commenter D provides some comments that were mentioned elsewhere as well. Question number 9, this is the last thing here. This was an open-ended question. Do you have any suggestions for improving how conflicts of interest are identified, declared, or managed? One member mentioned that there might be a need for consequences for when someone does actually vote when they have a conflict of interest. I think, then another commenter said that past financial relationships is too broad and unnecessary, but if needed, there could be some time bounds put on that. Otherwise, there's a strong desire to repeal paragraph B for some reasons provided, and that there should be no reason to exclude any member from voting on the final package. Commenter E suggests removing the policy altogether or defining financial conflict of interest very narrowly if members want to have career active commissioners participating in the process. A further comment on that, this member was saying that serving on the commission is professionally costly due to giving up collaborations so that the member may still preserve their ability to vote on a package. So it's resulting in their not being to fulfill their professional job fully. So those were a summary of the results. What staff tried to do is take those results and try to kind of address as many of them as we could that were mentioned. And as I said before, they kind of fell into 3 different categories: potential changes to statute, potential procedural changes, and potential policy changes. So first, with regard to the statute changes, these again would be recommendations to the legislature to modify statute. Again, if you could give us a sense today on which you might be interested, which if any you might be interested in pursuing, we would then develop language for that and come back to you at the next meeting, allow you to look at the language, see if that seems right, and if so, vote on that recommendation, and it would require 11 affirmative votes. So the options we provided were first to narrow the voting restriction. So this would revise paragraph B to narrow the prohibition on voting on the final recommendations package to only when the organization with which the member has a direct personal financial interest is being recommended to receive funding. You could add in there too, if they are the applicant or if they are being recommended to receive funding. This revision would still result in some members not being able to vote on the final recommendations package, but the instances in which that would happen would be narrowed from the current broad approach. So that is option 1. Option number 2 would be to replace the prohibition on voting on the package with a different prohibition that is currently only found in commission policy. And that is a prohibition on members either serving as the project manager for a proposed or funded project or from personally receiving funds. Those are 2 just restrictions that doesn't have to do with voting. It is just that those things are not allowed. Doing this replacement would restore the conflict of interest rules that were in place before 2023, but would emphasize that one existing prohibition. Besides that prohibition, all other conflicts would be managed the same. So it wouldn't matter if the conflict is a direct or indirect personal financial interest. If it's a non-financial interest, they would all be addressed the same, which is just refraining on decisions directly related to that organization. So that is the second option. The third option is to repeal the 2023 statute change, just get rid of it. That would also result in LCCMR operating under the conflict of interest rules that applied before 2023. Members would still be prohibited via policy from being a project manager or receiving funds directly through a proposal. And besides that prohibited conflict, all other conflicts would be managed the same. So again, it doesn't matter what the definition of direct or indirect, what things fall under each of those categories, because they are all treated the same in the end. So those are the three options we thought of for your consideration.
Thank you. So I see hands coming up. And what I'd like to do today is take a look at the statute options and try and get some consensus and vote on any changes that we want to see in the statute. But then also look at the procedures that we do here. We have in our procedures agreement that we've made, and then also the policy options, and just get some brief discussion and consensus around non-legislative changes that we might do internally here for our procedures and policies. But what I really want to focus on is the first part, and that is statute options. And as Becca mentioned, they've put three options out there, and I want to have some discussion. And so we're looking at the, at least Commissioner Reese hand, and then maybe others.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just Director Nash, I don't really see too much difference between 2 and 3. Could you differentiate those for me?
Director Nash.
Madam Chair and members, yeah, 2 is just putting into law something that's currently in policy. And so if you are removing a restriction, it just allows you to put in something else that is strong and talks about what's not allowed in terms of conflicts with the legislature.
Commissioner Reese. Okay. Any other hands up? Representative Scraba.
So what are the consequences? I mean, somebody had mentioned it in there. If, let's say you make it all the way through, let's say you are a member and you vote on everything, and organization that you belong to got money, they got their money, you got to vote on it, what's the consequences?
Good question. I'll let Director Nash address whether that is a conflict just because you're a member of an organization.
Yeah, Madam Chair and members, I would suggest that that's something that we would take up in either the procedures part of the discussion or the policy part of the discussion. I actually thought, I forgot, I did not put it on here, but I think it fits under section B2. I think that might be the place to have that conversation because that's currently not addressed in statute unless you wanted to bring something into statute. But I think we need to discuss what is the consequence first and then where does it belong in statute?
Representative Scraba.
And the reason I bring it up is in a tied house, every vote matters.
Yes.
And if there is a conflict of interest and that person cannot vote on it, is it, is that, I'm talking about here, I'm talking about the next level because it is a conflict of interest. So I'm curious as to where we're going. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure we have any purview over what the legislature's conflict of interest is, but I'll let Director Nash address that question.
Madam Chair and members, and let me know if this is what you're getting at. So the change that happened in 2023 that prohibited a member from voting on the recommendations package. And like you said, every vote might count. That statute also put in a provision for how you would handle that. And so currently you have a threshold of 11 members, but if somebody has that kind of qualifying conflict, then we would reduce the threshold by 1. So that, yes.
Oh, okay.
Representative Scraba?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Is that?
Yes, that
Yes.
answered that for us in here, that answered the
Yep.
question.
Yep, so
Very
if
good.
you wanted to keep in that provision that didn't allow members from voting on that final recommendations process, final recommendations package, there already is some language in statute that addresses what you do in terms of the vote, the tallying up the vote and reducing it so that for the number of people that have that conflict.
I have, is there anything else?
The only thing I question is when I was mayor, we had a lot of conflict of interest issues but when we were doing stuff. And when that person had to step down, there wasn't an adjustment.
Yeah.
It was just step down, c'est la
Have
vie,
one less
you know,
fewer
c'est la vie. That's just what happens.
Yep.
And by doing what you're doing is, you know, or what our policy is now is basically, you step down and everything adjusts.
Right, we
So-
renumber the
Right.
majority or the.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay,
I have
thank you.
Commissioner Moore and then Senator Westrom after him. Commissioner Moore.
Thank you, Chair Albrecht, and thank you for bringing up this issue for the commission, the executive director. I really would advocate for option 3, which is repealing the 2023 statute. And I say this because the current policy disproportionately affects the 7 citizen members, all of whom have built careers within the disciplines that are covered by ENTRF proposals. And so for that reason, those of us who are selected for our technical expertise oftentimes cannot even weigh in on votes for projects that we may be participating in as unfunded collaborators. The other issue I have with this is that the term financial conflict of interest seems to be defined in a manner that doesn't make sense to my way of thinking. And I say this thinking about the university, thinking about state agencies, or in my instance, thinking about a tribal agency. You know, if an entire agency is covered by a conflict of interest policy, then any individual member is perceived as having a financial conflict of interest when one clearly may not exist. And I, you know, here's an example. Let's say Rita had a past working for the DNR. If the DNR submits any possible project, it's perceived that she has a financial conflict of interest when in all likelihood there's no potential financial gain that Rita would incur as a result of that project being funded. So I think our definition is too broad currently and doesn't make logical sense for entities that are large enough that they have many different functions, many different disciplines that they're covered in many different departments. So again, I lean towards repealing the bill, going back to the pre-2023 version of that policy. If the commission wants career active people on the serving as citizen members.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Senator Westrom.
Madam Chair, I think I probably concur with Commissioner Moore, but my question deals with Commissioner Scriba's point on the consequence. And Becca, I heard what you said, maybe talk about that more in the process, and that's fine, other than I would like to just have it kind of in the picture as we're discussing this. But what is the consequence of somebody that's claimed a conflict in the past, maybe pre-2023 as well, but either way it applies? I mean, it's been mostly an honor system, and if you have a conflict and it gets outed, you're going to probably seek public rebuke or embarrassment. Is that really the consequence, or is there other consequences that people have to step down from the commission or pay back any financial gain? Or I guess I'm just asking the question because it kind of raises a good question of, if we have a conflict of interest policy and it is violated, what would happen to somebody that
Thank you, Director
so-called
Nash.
violates?
Madam Chair, members, we don't have any policy about that right now. So that is one of the options later on in the the procedure options or policy options, we could develop something out, we could discuss that, facilitate some conversation among the commission members about what they want that to look like. Certainly one of the issues is that I think and why it's so important for this members to be forthcoming about it is because it really affects the credibility of LCCMR too. It's not just the individual. But we currently do not have a policy on that, Senator Westrom. And we could look at developing something if that's of interest to the members.
Thank you. Other comments? Senator Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just listening and trying to go through in my mind what possible conclusions there could be. And one of the things that was brought up, it's really difficult to say to someone through this whole process that because you have a conflict of interest on X, Y, or Z, you can't vote for this project, this whole policy. Is there a way within our own institution of the LCCMR to say, when we come to the final package, if there's any projects that there's conflicts of interest, they could be separated out from the final bill and voted on separately? So let's say there's 3 projects that Commissioner Moore had a conflict of interest on. He wouldn't be able to vote on those, but he could vote on the package where he didn't have conflict of interest. Is that a possibility? I mean, I know we're in the statute part of this, but it might help us to pick a better statute if we knew that we could correct something in-house.
I'll have Director Nash answer, then I have a follow-up to clarify what you mean. Director Nash.
Madam Chair and members, I think technically that's possible. I think that could work. I haven't thought it through. I think we need to kind of do some thinking about that. The only thing I think about is that, sometimes a package represents, like we always talk about, not everybody likes everything, but somebody likes something, there's something for everybody in there. And so I don't know what the support for a smaller package would look like versus a bigger package. It would depend on which projects there are conflicts of interest about. So that's sort of a political consideration, not a tactical solution. But I think technically speaking, I don't see why you can't have 2 different packages.
Thank you. I'll just share that I'm not in favor of having 2 packages. I think it is very strong direction to the legislature when we have one package that we agree on. But the question I would follow up with, Senator Green, is if someone were to just remove themselves from the final vote and we had a separate conflict of interest pool, would that person during the review of projects, discussion of projects, be able to weigh in on those prior to it becoming a package? So that's where it gets a little bit gray for me. Do I have a conflict during the process of vetting projects and reviewing projects, or do I only have a conflict when it comes to the vote on the project? So I'm not a big fan of separating them out. Other names we have, did you want to follow up with that?
Yes, Madam Chair. I mean, I'm not suggesting that this is something that I'm pushing for. I'm throwing out ideas because it does seem to be an issue. I mean, I don't have conflicts of interest. I don't deal with the stuff that some of the other members do, but there's a lot of projects in there, and to say you can't vote for any of them because of 1 or 2, that was my goal.
Yeah.
But if there's a problem with it, I don't have a problem with that either. So.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing the issue up so that we can have that discussion. I see Commissioner Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One concern that I would appreciate being addressed is COI is basically a no vote right now, the way we handle the rankings and the tallying. And so I think that should be a weighted percentage rather than an actual vote. So for example, if you declared a COI, you're essentially looking at 16 votes if there's only 1 COI, and you still have to get that threshold of 8 or 10 or 9 to get funded. And I think that's a bit unfair for as Commissioner Moore alluded to, some of us have some pretty strong connections to these projects. And, we're declaring conflicts because of that. But then they are treated differently because, we're on the commission. So just consideration for you moving forward.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Beaman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I kind of wanted to go back to the amendment that came in 2023, which added the whole B section onward. In my mind, that muddied the water tremendously. It adds in language around things that should be managed through procedures. It uses terms interchangeably with what was in paragraph A, which I think creates some internal inconsistencies around definitions. So I would strongly be in favor of an option that would repeal that section B, because I don't think it helps anybody, and I think it confuses things. Looking at the question we've just been talking about in terms of the voting on the final package, I have a question here. It does, if you look at 5A sub B, a commission member may not vote on a motion on the final recommendations. I'm jumping ahead. If the motion relates to an organization in which the member has a direct personal financial interest. I think the definition of what is a direct personal financial interest is really at the heart of this. This is what we've been talking about is it direct if you work for the university, 3 steps away from what the proposer is, or you work for a state agency. And so my question would be, is there a place maybe in the procedures or in potential legislation that might further clarify a definition of direct financial interest that might help people be more comfortable with what is or isn't? And I don't know if the right place is in the statute or the right place might be in our internal LCCMR procedures.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I tend to support what Commissioner Moore and you have mentioned, and also Commissioner Reese have said, I think. And I think that we need to clarify within our policies and procedures those words that we're not clear what that means, the direct or bias, some of those other things that don't necessarily need a legislative fix in my mind. But I'm going to Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so maybe to that end, I have a question for staff, which is the issue, and maybe it's more of a discussion, is it the issue, the statute, or LCCMR members having confusion on the statute? So for example, in the legislature, and the other question I have is, how is this different from the legislative conflict of interest? So for example, teachers vote on the education bill in the legislature. Half of the education committee is teachers. So I think, but however, if you have if you work for an organization that is directly receiving funds, like as a direct appropriation, that's different.
Right.
Let's say there's a grant to Playworks and you happen to be, I'm using an education example, but you work for Playworks and you receive funding as part of that grant for the Stillwater area schools to receive this. That would be an example of a conflict of interest. So, and same thing with insurance agents on commerce bills. So how is this different from the legislative conflict of interest? And is what we're grappling with today the statute or just confusion about the statute? It seems like it might be a combination of both. So, we do have staff. I've come to you and said, I used to work for an organization that is funding another one of these projects. So having that ability for members to ask that question, just like legislators have the ability to ask nonpartisan staff in both the Senate, it looks like there is ability for senators to consult with nonpartisan staff. We certainly have that in the House. So is that more of an issue that members need that ability to confer, and should that maybe be part of our job, is to work with staff to determine conflicts of interest? And so I'm wondering if you can comment on where the issue is and how it's different from legislative conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Nash.
I don't know that I'll be able to do this justice. And I think some of this is, I guess my impression from the survey results is that there is disagreement with the statute. The statute emphasizes the financial relationship between the member and the organization. but then the organization could just be an unfunded partner on a project, receiving no funds from ENRTF. And that means that you can't vote on the entire package. So it seems to me the way that that statute is constructed is very broad. And I would say that is broader potentially than the legislative restriction. I think, I don't know. I think because that statute starts talking about certain kinds of conflicts of interest, there is then subsequent confusion about what kind of conflicts fall under each of those definitions, because now there are ramifications for it. Before, it's just conflicts, and any conflict just meant that you needed to refrain from voting on that specific topic. But now certain kind of conflicts mean you can't vote on the package. So now there's confusion and even disagreement about how those things are defined, both in statute and policy. Is that, I don't know if I've done a fair assessment of members.
That's helpful. A follow-up, if I may, Madam
Yes.
Chair. Does LCCMR staff feel confused about the statute?
Director Nash. Maybe just to rephrase, if you don't mind, Representative Jordan, does staff have difficulty sometimes interpreting the statute and conflict of interest for members?
Yes, yes. And it's also because we have to count and we have to get it nailed down, because we need to count it so that you have that information when you are voting.
The number of votes that are going to be at.
Yeah, the number of votes, and then oftentimes there are multiple different package motions. And so we have to go through and find out which motions contain which projects, and does that mean that you can discuss it but not vote on it? Does that mean that you have to fully, you know, it's complicated. It's complicated. Yeah.
I think this discussion recognizes that some clarification in one way or another is needed. I'm not sure who was first, but I'm going to go to Senator Herr and then Commissioner Reese. Senator Herr.
Okay, and this question might be going to Director Nash, is how this conflict of interest come to us for action? Is it the staff, or is it a annual process that we have to come back and review this conflict interest definition?
Director Nash.
Madam Chair and members, so there have been during several meetings, comments by members made about, and offline too, I would say, confusion, disagreement, and in the last couple of meetings included. And so we were asked by the commission to, there's something going on here. Staff, could you please do a survey to gather input from members so that we can think about if any changes to policy are needed?
Yes.
Yeah,
Senator Herr.
I like to figure things out and make things more clear for staff. But and this is just my general observation of the survey. The first question is like, is it clear? And I would say majority said it's not that clear. But then generally, if each answer following that different, you could look into it and then make a point. But just my general observation, a glance at it, looks like all the following answer looks like people know that it's a little clear already. So the rest of the question doesn't really justify the first question that they're not clear. So that's where, not that I'm opposed, I just want to make that statement, and I like us to figure out so that we have a good definition for staff to operate on. The last thing that I want to point out also, that whatever we decide here, it's still going to go to legislation, right? Whatever we decide here.
If you want to pursue
recommend
any
any
of these
changes.
three.
Okay, so that's also another challenge that we're gonna face too with the atmosphere that we're in now, with the gridlock in the House. And the Senate may be okay by one, so I have to talk to Senator Green on that. but-
Yes,
but
yes.
That's outside this committee. Just
Thank-
want to point that out.
Yes,
That's
I-
all. Thank you.
It did, I would say that the survey results did indicate some alignment on issues between citizens and legislators, and there was bipartisanship in some opinions, so I would just let you know that. And I just also want to say that we did put the statute options first in this discussion because depending on which option you choose, or if any of them, it would mean that a bunch of additional work may not be necessary. So if you, like, for example, if you go to, I mean, I guess any of them, it's addressing in some way the definitions. If you do 2 or 3, we don't really need to have the conversation about the definitions. We can give examples to prompt people's thinking so that they know what things they might need to come forward with, but it really doesn't matter what the definition of indirect financial conflict of interest is, because the remedy is still the same thing. You want to refrain from voting on an issue that you have any conflict of interest on. So that's why we put these potential statute changes up here first, because it could just really resolve, several things.
I have, I'm sorry, Commissioner Reese and then Commissioner Moore. Mr. Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would favor repealing the 2023 legislation or statutes. I think that does cause confusion. When I first applied for this position and was appointed by the Senate, I worked with a conflict of management plan with staff, and it was important to me because I likely would not have accepted it if I didn't, because I didn't, if, as many of you know, university has many proposals, and if that was the boundary, then why participate? Because I wouldn't have been able to discuss and vote on much at all. And through that process, the boundary was set at the West Central Research and Outreach Center, which is my department. And so that's and then also beyond that, I have to declare conflicts on projects that I'm participating in, and I declare whether there's financial or not. And I feel that that's a firm enough boundary that I can declare conflicts. And I think I probably have the record for declaring.
You're the
I have the record for declaring conflicts of interest. I think that the disappointing part was when the 2023 legislation came in, and then I wasn't able to vote on the final package because that changed rules and from what it was before I agreed to be a member and move forward and was appointed. But it's been a privilege to serve on this commission, and so I don't want to say that's not. But at the same time, you got to weigh those things before you actually participate.
Thank you. Commissioner Moore.
Thank you, Chair Albrecht.
And then Commissioner Faber. Commissioner Moore.
And thank you, Commissioner Reese, for your comments. I agree with them. We sort of wandered away a little bit from when I rose my hand, but it was related to Director Nash's comments about when commissioners participate as unfunded collaborators. And I give this example. My agency is participating in a project whereby we are contributing about $500,000 in salary and in equipment and supplies to a $2 million project. So a value of 25% of the project is being contributed to by my agency, where I have to declare a conflict of interest. And I understand not weighing in on that project itself, but to not be able to vote on the entire package seems like a high burden to pay when commissioners are interested in contributing to the net value of the LCCMR proposal and funding process. And so, again, I agree with my earlier comments about repealing the 2019 provision, and I also agree with Commissioner Reese on this as well. Thank you. One comment further, sorry, before I finish, is when an agency or an entity or an individual is contributing financially to a project or in-kind service, I have a hard time understanding how that individual could be a net beneficiary in a financial capacity. So the definition of financial conflict of interest implies that that individual may be gaining financially from that project. If the person is contributing to the project, there's no possible way they could be a net financial gainer from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Have Commissioner Faber. Mr. Faber, did you have a comment?
Sorry, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just gonna add on to Commissioner Reese. I was 10 years on the commission before I couldn't vote on a package in 2023. So I understand the ouch, and also with Commissioner Moore. Now, that being said, the whole problem for me comes on, I'm supportive of us suggesting that we withdraw the 2023 change. But the problem for me comes down to what is a direct personal financial interest. It has to be way better defined than what it was. It's all about interpretation. I serve on an SWCD in Morrison County, and because they applied for money and got it, and I get per diem, that's a direct financial interest. Are you kidding me? That's not what I see, but I claim that, and I couldn't vote in the package in 23. I think it sucks. So we either got to sharpen it up, or, people aren't going to want to be applying for the citizen position. So, all right, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments or questions around the table for this issue? What are the commission's wishes on this? Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe it would be helpful to talk a little bit about what the LCCMR, I have some cards on table. I have some reticence about completely repealing a statutory change when we are in an era actually of heightened scrutiny about government votes on packaging and direct appropriations. I think it would be quite a drinking game if you drank every time you heard the words waste, fraud, and abuse in the legislature. But I'm not proposing that. I would not win. But so I have some concerns about repealing some of these statute conflict of interest statute changes. That gives me a little bit of heartburn, just where we're actually looking at, in some cases, addressing direct appropriations across, the legislative sphere. This is public dollars that come from our lottery money. So I wasn't on the commission before this year. So what were the conflict of interest rules, and how, we've heard some of the results of that. We've talked a lot about the ability to vote on the final passage, but what was it? And were there questions? It sounds like there were existing questions about conflict of interest law. That's probably what necessitated the statute change, is members had questions about conflict of interest. So what was the status quo in 2022?
Director Nash.
Madam Chair and members, it was paragraph A, which said that if you have a conflict of interest, and quite honestly, if it's financial, indirect financial, direct financial, or not financial at all, you should recuse yourself from participating on that vote a specific vote related to that organization. So that's what it was. They were all treated the same. I just want to acknowledge the difficulty that your comment about being difficult about repealing it. And that's also potentially why option 2 is being provided.
Yeah, thank you.
Because you are putting in a strong restriction.
Yes, and Madam Chair, I would.
Representative Jordan.
Thank you. I do think we have kind of just talked a lot about statute, going to 3, we're replacing with a different prohibition. I think we haven't really talked about option 2 and what that would mean. I think members have talked a lot about some of their, and brought up real points. Commissioner Faber spoke very eloquently, in my opinion, and clearly about what the issue is. And we need that clear language. Clear language is obviously why we're here debating this issue. So I do think it would be helpful to talk a little bit about option 2.
Thank you. Yeah, option 2 is really the clarification option. where we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We just tweak the language to make it easier to understand and more sensible for us as we do the work of the commission. Other hands on this issue? I see Commissioner Reese and then Representative Scrubba.
I think what is proposed, thank you, Madam Chair, I think what was proposed in two, where we just essentially accept the LCCMR policy and put that into statute, I think that would be a reasonable approach. And it would also essentially be repealing 2023.
Right, so it would be members cannot serve as a project manager for or receive personal funding from a proposal being reviewed or funded. It's pretty clear and simple. Representative Scrubba.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Dr. Faber, did you have a comment?
No, I was going to say, thank you, Representative Jordan. Holy moly, that just made my day.
If nothing else, he's a straight talker. We know that. Other comments or questions about this issue before we take some action? I'm going to go to Commissioner Beaman and then to Senator Westrom. Commissioner Beaman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I just wanted to say, I think that's Senator's point is a good sensitivity to the times we are in and to the scrutiny for waste, fraud, and abuse and anything else. And so I actually think that that makes it a stronger case to do the replacement. But just to be clear, it means taking out all of B and just putting in the clarification around that. Okay, got it. Love that.
Thank you. Senator Westrom, did you have a question?
Chair, mulling this stuff over as well. Appreciate the comments for Representative Jordan, Commissioner Faber, yourself, Commissioner Reese. I think the one thing is conclusive. 2023 statute does need to change or be repealed. And so I speak in favor of option 3 and maybe option 2 is a practical way to do it. Otherwise, I guess question, Director Nash, again, what are you looking for, if you can remind us or refresh? And then option 2, maybe just in lay terms, if you could explain the thoughts behind that, just so we better understand option 2 if we were look at that instead of option 3.
Thank you. Director Nash.
Mr. Chair, so today we would like you to vote ideally to indicate if you would like to pursue option 1 or 2 or 3. So that we can draw up some specific language for you to look at the next meeting, and that's when you would vote on it. And that would be a recommendation to the legislature.
And can you clarify what that is then for number 2?
Yeah, so number 2 is basically repealing the statute from 2023, but instead of just saying we're taking it out, you would replace it with language that clarifies that members cannot serve as project manager for or receive personal funding from a proposal being reviewed or funded by the LCCMR. So it gives you something strong, a prohibition that's strong, that's good, good policy to replace that repeal with.
And
Senator Westrom.
And Madam Chair, or Director Nash, the way I'm viewing that is more what was going on before, but it would actually put some of the policy and what I think most of us would say is on the side of the conflict pendulum. And just so that would clarify it in statute, but it really would embrace what was the practice before.
Yes.
Commissioner Reese talked about his situation. I know others have had that with a management plan kind of put in place right up front that just says, here's where you need to be concerned about a conflict of interest.
Correct.
Is that a correct recap?
That is correct. Sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay.
Senator Westrom, that is correct. It would be taking what is currently in policy only and strengthening it by putting it in statute.
And final comment then, Madam Chair. So that would help conclude and give members, again, kind of a clear boundary as they join the commission and as they proceed, which I think would be a positive step in the right direction and much more manageable. I think we don't want people getting direct payments, probably making those votes, but being part of a university system that might fund something on the St. Paul campus and your scope of work is in Stevens County, Morris, Minnesota, in that region, not even related to it. And I'm sorry to pick on Commissioner Reese with my example, but everybody can kind of extrapolate from that with other similar ideas.
Yes.
We also want to be mindful that it's not something that's financially going in somebody's pocket. Lastly, I would just remind us all, this commission, so I think that's a reasonable place for us to land. This commission, again, is not making the final decisions either. So that's another protection of a conflict of interest. One, for if some public information comes forward and somebody's, has more influence on the project or financial benefit than not, there's still a legislative process that has to go through, and it's the legislature that ultimately will put projects in or take projects out. And so this commission is not making those final decisions. So I think level 2, I'm talking myself into being a reasonable spot to land. That
I think you are.
Representative
Yeah. All right.
brought up. So at the right time, if
We hear-
Representative Jordan doesn't move it, I would move that motion.
So I'm going to ask if there's any additional discussion. Otherwise, I will ask for that motion. And if Senator Westrom wants to make that or Representative Jordan, either one would be fine. Any final hands up? Commissioner Reese.
Yeah, I do. Again, I will emphasize it. I think it's really important that every citizen member have a conflict of interest management plan, even if they think they don't need one, because it not only helps the member, it helps the staff to better understand what the boundaries are so that they can point out potential conflicts of interest, which has been very helpful for me. Staff watches it very closely and monitors it. And so I would encourage that either to be put in policy or perhaps even in the statutes. And I think the other concern is if you are a direct supervisor of someone that does have is a project manager and is applying for funding, that might be something to consider as well. But
Anything to the motion?
pardon me.
Anything to the motion?
Well, I think part of it was to the motion, the conflict of interest management plan.
To policy and procedure. I agree. I think putting that into our policies and procedures is a good idea. So if I'm understanding correctly, Senator Westrom would like to move to request staff.
Madam Chair, I'll defer to Senator Representative Jordan. She's
Okay.
the one that brought it up first, but I just wanted to.
Representative Jordan.
So moved.
Representative Jordan moves to request staff to further develop option A2 for a statutory change. And to that, I will ask the staff to take the roll.
Albright.
Yes.
Albright, yes. Per.
Yes.
Per, yes. Jordan.
Yes.
Jordan, yes. Beeman.
Yes.
Beeman, yes. Faber.
Faber, aye.
Faber, yes. Fisher is excused. Green.
Yes.
Green, yes. Hedstrom.
Hedstrom, yes.
Hedstrom, yes. Heinzman. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. Lilly. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Moore.
More yes.
Moore, yes. Putnam.
Excused.
Putnam is excused. Reese.
Reese, yes.
Reese, yes. Scraba.
Scraba, yes.
Scraba, yes. Westrom.
Yes.
Westrom, yes. Currently, there are 13 yes.
Thank you. That motion prevails. Thanks for that discussion. I hope I didn't cut anyone off when they wanted to say more. But I know that our time is slipping away, and so I'm going to ask staff, would you like us to continue the discussion about policies and procedures? Or get maybe take a few minutes for that, or would you like us to set that aside?
Madam Chair, what I would prefer to do, I think right now, is move to the RFP and calendar discussions to make sure that we get those done. If there's extra time, if there's extra time by magic, we'll come back to this, but otherwise, the policies and procedures can happen at the next meeting. That would be fine.
And perhaps what members can do is review those and make comments by email to staff on what you think is appropriate. And Senator Westrom.
Madam Chair, just as we move on, I want to just raise the point Commissioner Reese maybe brought up, that I think part of the policy, maybe not necessarily the statute, but we can discuss that further. But I think the direction to staff, subject to others raising objections, I think would be that our policy could certainly, or the process could embrace the idea that everybody has a management plan. And I think that's probably prudent and practical. And so I would just urge staff to probably lean in that direction, subject to strong opposition. And if anybody has a opposition to that, I'd urge you to speak your mind quickly now as we move on. But I think that's, my sense is everybody would probably lean in that direction as well, subject to any objection.
Thank you. I agree. I think it was a great recommendation. I know it's served Commissioner Reese well over the last several years, and it makes sense that it would work in this case as well. So I know that staff has been frantically taking notes, and they have that in their notes of the meeting, and so they'll bring something like that forward to us, I'm sure.
Wonderful.
And all right, ready to move on then. So I'm going to move on here then. We are going to the draft RFP, and I believe that is Mr. Campana.
Yes, Madam Chair. So members, you have in front of you the draft 2027 RFP. The 2027 RFP is based off the 2026 RFP with changes. So what I was going to do, if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, is walk through the changes and differences from the 2026 RFP that are in front of you right now. All right, so beginning on page 1, the major changes here is just we will need to insert the amount that is estimated to be available into the RFP. We won't actually know the final amount until later in the year, but we will put in an estimate closer to the time of RFP release. Also, we need to just update when the proposals will be due to us. And that's a decision you'll make when you approve the calendar, and we will insert that date. Otherwise, on page 1, there was a slight change to the language on what standard project length, just to try and make it clearer, but no other changes from the 2026 RFP. Moving on to page 2. Once again, the changes from the 2026 RFP is just going to be insert the dates once you approve the calendar so that the timeline has all the dates in it. We have also added a couple lines just to provide a little greater transparency. So we've added a line for when the member evaluation number 1 deadline is. We've added a line when the member evaluation number 2 deadline is. The only other change on this would be the final line on the timeline, which is Minnesota, when the DNR does grant agreements, to be a little more accurate in terms of the time it takes DNR to get those grant agreements. Now it's before it said just July, now it says July through September. We've also indicated that the DNR does conduct physical capacity reviews at that time. So those are the only changes on page 2 from the 2026 RFP. Moving on to the funding priorities. So this is page 3 through 6. The changes here are actually indicated in red. So if any of you can see the red, those are where the changes are. The only changes here from the 2026 RFP is we have added in strategies that were part of the strategic plan, but were originally under the emerging issues goal. During your emerging issues discussion this summer, you had discussed those priorities and strategies, and you determined you didn't think they were appropriate for the emerging issues account. So staff have proposed to incorporate them into the main RFP as priorities. Most of those are under the resiliency category, and I'll just read through them quickly. So we've added a priority to identify, assess, and/or prioritize potential threats to the environment and natural resources. We've added research and/or develop technologies and measures to detect or address emerging or emergency threats to the environment and natural resources. We've added create collaborations and build partnerships among all parties, including academic institutions, government agencies, non-government organizations, communities, and the private sector to foster innovation and leverage resources and expertise to better address emerging threats to the environment and natural resources. We've added enhanced coordination and interagency collaboration among federal, state, tribal, and local governments to ensure a unified response. And we have added implement proactive measures to prevent or minimize the impacts from emerging environmental or natural resource issues. So those were all added under the resiliency category. And once again, those were strategies from the emerging issues goal in the strategic plan. We've also added one priority under the land category. That's on page 6. Once again, this was a strategy from emerging issues. And that priority would be implement natural resource corrective actions where delay will be detrimental to the environment and natural resources. There was one final strategy in the emerging issues goals from the strategic plan, which was to restore impacted ecosystems to minimize the loss of benefits provided by these systems to people, fish, plants, and wildlife. We're proposing not to include that in the RFP because we feel like there are enough priorities already dealing with restoration that it's already covered by other priorities and it would just be redundant. So, but just to let you know, that was a strategy in the strategic plan that we're proposing not to include. So those are all the changes to the funding priorities. Page 7, no changes there. Just to point out, at this time, the threshold for small projects is still $300,000, which was the threshold used in 2026. Moving on to page 8. So this is the requirements section of the RFP. So we've made a few changes to the financial capacity section, mainly just to provide clarification on what we're looking for. One substantive change is in the 2026 RFP, we had requested that political subdivisions also provide us with current financial statements. We have eliminated that requirement. So the only thing we would ask them to submit would be their most recent audit report. And then under the requirements for capital construction projects, we've just clarified what we're looking for in a map there. And we've also added a line that if they have any concept plans or completed designs available, that those should also be attached. And then moving on to page 9, similarly in the additional requirements for land acquisitions, easements, and restorations, we've just provided a little more clarification in the language in terms of the maps we need from people and also the parcel list they will be asked to be provided as part of their proposal. Just one other comment on pages 8 and 9, just so you're all aware. There are a number of links in this section to requirements documents. We are still in the process of reviewing those documents. So if you did look at an online version and click on any of those links, they are still the 2026 versions. There may be changes in those. Usually those are just technical changes or clarifications that are needed. So just so you're aware of that. At this time, we're only expecting a small update to the easement acquisition document and some updates to the capital construction questionnaire and addendum, but those are still in the process. Moving on to page 10, this is the guidance on allowable expenses. We have made a couple changes here. So under the generally ineligible expenses, J previously was out-of-state expenses for transportation and travel. We've expanded this to be all out-of-state expenses. So that would include travel, transportation, contracting, and any out-of-state expense would be generally ineligible. And all that means is that we would ask the applicants to provide us a little more justification about why that out-of-state expense is necessary. So just that's a change from the 2026 RFP. The other thing we have done is K under generally ineligible expenses is transportation and travel expenses such as lodging, meals, and mileage for non-employees. This wasn't in the 2026 RFP. However, well, I shouldn't say it wasn't in there. It was in there, but it was actually under eligible expenses. So it was a little bit mixing eligible expenses and ineligible expenses. So we've just basically moved that restriction to the generally ineligible expenses section of the guidance on allowable expenses. So it's not a new generally ineligible expense. It's just trying to once again clarify that it's a generally ineligible expense. And once again, those can be funded and those funds can be used for that as long as they provide additional justification and you all approve the work plan with that expense. The only other change to the guidance on allowable expenses is under prohibited expenses under G, which is bad debts, late payment fees, or finance charges. Previously, that also included contingency funds. We have removed that as a potential prohibition. The main thinking there being that with the number of capital construction projects, contingency funds are a pretty standard thing for those type of projects. So having it as a flat out prohibition might be confusing to people, and we wanted to make sure that that was something that they could include in there, that reasonable contingency funds could be included. Moving on to page 11, that's just the constitutional and statutory language. There's been no changes there. And then finally on page 12, and this is just the how to apply section. The only change here is we have added just a little bit of direction to them in terms of what we're looking for in terms of visual component or map. Previously, this direction was provided in the online management system, so when they submit a proposal, but we thought it would be good to also have it in here so they know in advance before they get in there what we're looking for. And then just one little line at the bottom that we've just directed people to the proposal and funding process page that will be on the LCCMR website, where they can get guidance on how to submit questions to staff or how to set up a meeting with staff and when we are doing those. Those are all the changes from the 2026 RFP that are proposed in front of you in this draft 2027 RFP.
Thank you. I would entertain questions, but also if anyone wants to move this RFP, I would entertain that as well. Commissioner Beaman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For staff, so back on page 6, where you have added in that 5 under land, implement natural resource corrective actions where delay will be detrimental to the. Can you remind me where in the, is there a path still through emergency funding if truly something is imminent and delay would be detrimental, that they could come and seek funding outside of the regular RFP?
Mr. Campana.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Beaman, I think, yes, as long as it meets the criteria of the emerging issues account that were established, certainly that type of action would still fall under emerging issues account funding if you approved it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing Commissioner Langseth and then Senator Westrom.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion if that's appropriate at this time.
Sure.
I would move to adopt our 2027 draft RFP for this next year.
Thank you. Senator Westrom.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Beaman, I might be repeating a similar question, but I was looking at something as you were giving part of the answers. So I'm wondering, could you just repeat what she asked? And my question is the emerging issues language tightened up per our discussion this summer? And maybe that's what she asked and I missed it. I apologize if so, but if not, I just wanted to focus on that language because that was a big concern this summer. I still have some concerns that's Katie bar the door type of situation but can you give me repeat response you gave to her and add to it if some of my question is beyond what she had asked?
Mr. Campana.
Yes, Senator Westrom. I think there are 2 questions in there. I'll try and address both of them. So Commissioner Beaman specifically asked about a strategy that was added as a priority to the 2027 RFP, which is implement natural resource corrective actions where delay will be detrimental to the environment and natural resources. And I believe her question was, could someone still go to the emerging issues account and apply through that for that type of situation? And the answer was yes, as long as it meets the other criteria under the emerging issues account, certainly this priority could be covered under an emerging issues request. Regarding your second question about the updates to the emerging issues account and the criteria, as I think Director Nash mentioned earlier, based on your discussions on the summer and what was adopted during summer, we have updated those criteria to reflect those discussions. And I think if you have any specific questions about those updates, maybe Director Nash could provide you more information.
Director Nash.
Senator Westrom, I do have those emerging issues account criteria in front of me if you want me to refresh the commission what those are.
That'd be great, Madam Chair. And
Sure.
in short, I think we did approve some language that tightened them up this summer.
Yes.
And that's part of it.
Correct. It's separate from this document. And so Director Nash is going to go through that.
Yes, so this is now for the separate kind of process related just to the emerging issues account funding. The new criteria are that the proposed efforts must be consistent with the constitutional purpose of the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund and the Commission's strategic plan. They must address an issue that came up unexpectedly. They must implement a solution where following the standard LCCMR funding cycle or waiting for the next legislative session would result in significant detrimental impact on the environment and natural resources, and they must be ready to be implemented as soon as funds are available.
Senator Westrom, is that clarified? Thank you. So Commissioner Reese.
Yeah, to that point, I believe there was also some procedures attached to that where the commission needed to have a certain number of votes or to move those into full discussion and presentation. Is that correct?
Director Nash.
Madam Chair, that is correct. We will send out the proposals to you and you let us know if you want to select that proposal for presentation. We need to receive at least 8 responses, and a simple majority of that indicating they want it selected for presentation will be the deciding factor to invite those presenters. But you will still vote on all of the proposals.
Thank you.
So only those that you selected will actually provide a presentation, but we will have a vote on all the proposals that you received.
All right. Any other questions on the RFP before us and the motion to approve? Senator Westrom.
Madam Chair, to that point, how did we come up with the number 8
8 on the emerging issues?
on the emerging issues? Because that's not even a majority.
Director Nash.
I don't know where the exact number 8 came from, but it was just saying that we needed a simple majority of respondents to select for presentation. But if we only receive responses from 4 people, that means we only need 3 people to select them for presentation. So it was just kind of putting on almost a quorum. It's almost a quorum that you need a response from to make sure that we have adequate input.
And Madam Director Nash, that's not part of the RFP, but that's part of the emerging issues process. Where or how could we change that number if we were going to?
It's in policy. So Director Nash, you want to review that?
Madam Chair and members, so that is, that policy is approved as part of the LCCMR's operating procedures. We had some of those conversations this summer so that we could get them in place for the deadline that is today. But staff is planning to bring back those revisions to you at the next meeting to see if there are any tweaks, because you didn't see them kind of in a finalized form. So there may be an opportunity at the next meeting, Senator Westrom.
And just to that point, but I know we got to move on. I think that should be a higher threshold, at least a majority and maybe even 11, which is kind of what we use to pass consensus, with the idea that it should be difficult to get into the emerging issues category and bypass the legislative process. So I hope we can have a further discussion on that.
Good point. Director Nash.
Correct. And I just want to clarify, Senator Westrom, the simple majority out of at least 8 respondents is just that first cut to invite somebody in for presentation. But in order to get funded, it has to be 60% of the members present at the meeting voting. So the threshold to actually award funding is higher.
And may I also add that the key is that this is a request by email that staff sends out. Tell us which ones you want to have presentations. And so the key is that members have to read their email and have to respond.
And Madam Chair, just
Yes,
to
Senator
the point, what we had happen this summer to me was a complete waste of our time.
Right.
For an hour or 2 of commission to have everybody come in and get denied. And I think we could have stopped that right at the beginning if we had had a much higher rigorous. And so I almost think the approval should be high enough that would match what it's going to take to get through the commission, because if it's really that emerging issue of an issue and that time sensitive that it can't wait 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months for the process, it's going to get that high standard or mark if it really is that emerging issue. And so that's where I'm kind of coming from.
Fair point. Yeah, fair point. Thanks for bringing that up. And as Director Nash says, we'll revisit that. Anything else to the motion? Seeing none, I'll ask the staff to take the roll.
Albright.
I'm sorry. Did Director Nash has one more thing?
Sorry, could I just ask Senator or Commission Member Langseth to maybe incorporate into the motion that small technical changes by staff might be possible, because I've already seen a couple just like teeny little things that we might want to adjust.
So Commissioner Langseth, will you incorporate into your motion those technical changes by staff?
Yeah, and as I was reflecting back on what I said, I was like, I should have said in staff edits too.
Thank
So
you.
I move to approve the draft 2027 RFP for next year, including staff technical changes as needed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll have staff take the roll.
Albright.
Yes.
Albright, yes. Her.
Yes.
Her, yes. Jordan.
Yes.
Jordan, yes. Beeman.
Yes.
Beeman, yes. Faber.
Aye.
Faber, yes. Fisher is excused. Green. Green, no. Hedstrom.
Hedstrom, yes.
Hedstrom, yes. Heinzman. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. Lilly. McEwen.
Yes.
McEwen, yes. Moore.
More yes.
Moore, yes. Putnam is excused. Reese.
Yes.
Reese, yes. Scrabba.
Yes.
Scrabba, yes. Westrom.
No.
From no. Currently, there are 11 yes, 2 no.
Thank you. That motion prevails. We're going to continue, and I'm going to ask your indulgence for maybe a few extra minutes after our noon ending time so that we can finish up the very brief things that we have left on our agenda. And to that, I'm going to move to number 8, which is discussion and action on the draft 2026 LCCMR meeting calendar to Mr. Varian.
Chair Albright, members of the commission, you have before you 3 options for the 2026 LCCMR calendar for consideration. The options include an early, middle, and late option. The primary difference between these options is as follows. The early option does compress the time for members to do their evaluations after session. The late option does compress the time for staff to do their work after the allocation and recommendation meetings. And the middle option is balanced for member evaluations after session and staff work after allocation and recommendation meetings. There's one note, staff may need to adjust the emerging issues dates to allow for more time for staff and members to review emerging issue requests according to the newly adopted process. Chair Albright and members of the commission, at this time, if you have any questions for staff or would like to discuss the options, or if agreeable, you may consider a motion to adopt the 2026 calendar today.
Thank you. So as Mr. Varian said, we've got the first page, which is basically the same basic timeline that we've been following for a number of cycles. The middle one moves it down into the middle of the summer, and then the other one is a late one. I will say that you can see some color coding. All of those, they have to shift as a group to pick and choose anything out of those, that bank of colored calendar times really will mess up something else. So we like to have that shift in a group, which is why they're color coded that way. Would that be correct, Mr. Varian?
Chair Albright and members, kind of. The big block in the middle is kind of highlighting all of the presentation dates and whatnot. If we shift that, then we really have to shift everything. And at that point, we're really just changing from early, middle to late.
Okay.
Where we have maybe a little bit of room is around the selection meeting a couple of days and the allocation meeting a couple of days. Otherwise, the three options are kind of a block in themselves.
And those are in green. All right, so to the calendar, are there comments? Senator Westrom.
Madam Chair, I guess I want to just talk about the idea of proposing maybe a little different hybrid, but June 1st is just not very practical from a ending legislative session to getting things reviewed. So I would just urge us to look at that. I think it's June 15th, if I remember what the calendar reviewed, as the deadline to submit it in from members of the commission. Maybe June 10th, I think is about a Tuesday or a Wednesday, a week, 10 days into June, well after Memorial Day. Something like that to me, I think is more reasonable. My second point, and I guess I would request some feedback on it, but what would people's ideas or thoughts be of either doing something in early to mid-September for the presentations as opposed to eating up our summer days, which are very coveted. We have an election year next year. Primary is the second Tuesday in August. And so if anybody's involved in one of those situations, they aren't going to want to be in meetings in July. And so is there a balance where something far enough before the election, we don't want to get into mid and late October, but a week or two right after Labor Day might be a sweet spot, or right after the primary in August would be another alternative. But I'd be interested in people's feedback on that instead of using June and July dates up or early August, which is, I guess, maybe not everybody covets their summer like some of us do, but
Thank you.
there's just a lot of summer activity going on, and that'd be my preference. But June 1st, I think, is just too early whenever we decide.
Thank you. Representative Scrabble. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, my memory of this June coming from the legislature to this was there's not enough time. I mean, if you have any leadership at all, you're trying to clean up everything that happened and where we're dealing with. And then all of a sudden now, boom, here you are. You got to get it in now. And it's like, you want me to review 164 projects by when?
Or 400.
400, yeah. And it's kind of like, I'm not bragging, but I'm good, but I'm not that good. It's like, so it got to the point where I'm like, this is crazy. This has to move. And like Senator Westrom, during election years are different for us members, for the legislative members. The September sounds more appealing, and I don't see any September. If there's a reason staff or anyone why September doesn't work, but September is not again, I make my living in the woods. I guide canoe trips. So either way, I'm adjusting my schedule for everyone else, trying to get to do this. Keep peace in my world both ways. I mean, I need that to be sane. I do this for money, so to speak. But I'm trying to figure out, the early one just didn't work. And if there's any way to avoid the early would be better with me. But, and even the late one, that's in August. That's different. I tend to agree with Senator Westrom, if we can go that way.
Other comments or concerns? And maybe I'll have staff respond to, can we shift it? And you're talking about the presentation schedule into September. Director Nash?
Madam Chair and members, and we provided some language on this, I think, in the email that went out with this before the meeting. I think that the issue is the scale at which we're working and the quantity of proposals and quantity of projects that we are funding and the caseload that we are carrying. The scale at which we are operating does not allow us to condense 6 months of work into 2 months. The deadline for getting the work stays the same regardless here. We are trying to get the work done by the end of the calendar year. That is when members' terms end. And that is also to align with the legislative cycle so that the bill is ready and all the things that are associated with getting the bill together have been done and are ready for that process to start. So putting it in September, again, is compressing 6 months of work into 2 months, which we just can't do, unfortunately. I wish we could. I know we used to do it with a much, much, much smaller amount of work on our plates. And I think even then, staff struggled to do that. The additional issue related with that September option is that that's only for some years. So this year, September would work. Next year, election year, I mean, unless I'm thinking about this wrong, but September, it would work, but next year, in election year, it would not work. So what happens is that then you have one RFP going late and another RFP going early the next year, which means you've got 2 RFP processes bumping up against each other with no time in between for any recovery. And so now you're actually talking about, 2 years worth of work being compressed into just 2 very short cycles. So it just is kind of a physics problem. It just doesn't work at the scale we're working at. Again, talking about like the peak demands. It's putting all of the work into a very short amount of time. If that helps clarify.
Thank you. Commissioner Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for Director Nash. The primary is September
August.
9th, September 12th, or excuse me, August 12th. Is there a possibility of slightly moving the August dates past that? Because I think that's probably reasonable for expectation for the legislative members here to need to focus on that.
Yes, August 12th. And I think definitely like a day here or 2 is something that could be accommodated. And I think, Michael, we'd want to look back and just double check our calculation of the time between the meetings and exactly what needs to happen at that time. But certainly we should avoid that day.
So Commissioner Reese, you're leaning towards that third option, which is the late option. Would you say, is that true? Or no?
Yeah, I was leaning towards that option, but moving all of the presentations.
Just sliding them down a little bit more.
Yep. To August 13th or starting August 13th.
Mhm.
Perhaps.
Thank you.
The whole week delay for, to be after, I see, to be after primaries, not leading up in the days before. That may
then-
be challenging. I think the email that we sent out already did provide a caveat that we are not convinced. We have to be, and I need to be better about this to let members know that this option will impact our ability to conduct our work. So we developed a backlog of work in the last several years, and that was because work was added on that we did not have capacity to take on. And so we put this on here because there was interest in it, but we cannot guarantee that it will not impact our ability to fill our other duties that we have as part of LCCMR, the whole scope of the work that we do, in addition to the RFP proposal process. There are reports to the legislature. There's approving final reports in time so people can be reimbursed. There's approving work plan updates and amendments likewise, so people can get reimbursed. So we are concerned about that.
Mhm.
As is with the August 4th through the August 11th schedule.
Mhm. Representative Scrabba.
So what's the turnaround time? If we move this further and let's say your project gets approved, does any of this affect construction time, or is it going to be the next year? But if you get approved, well, you don't know. This is all just the process. So it's not going to affect any like if it's in July, June or August, it's not like the end for, I'm thinking about the people that are applying. How does it affect them? How will it affect them? How long do they have to wait, or is that going to change any more or any less?
Do you want to answer that, Michael?
So, Director Nash or Mr. Varian?
Chair Albrecht and members, the three options that we have here, there is a little bit of a difference in terms of when the RFP opens and when it closes. So the early one does make the process longer overall for the proposer. The later option here does shorten it by a few weeks. So there's a little bit of a time saving for the proposer.
Director Nash.
Madam Chair, and I would just add on also, if your question is about like implementation, like can they get out to do the construction? It does not, the timing of LCCMR's recommendations don't affect when the funding becomes available. So yeah, so it would still have to go to the legislature approves it. Only approved work plans could start July 1, regardless of when we do it, but getting their work plans approved in time so that you can, so that they are approved to start going, that would absolutely be compressed with this late. It would be harder for us to get those ready for you to approve in time for them to start.
Other comments or questions? It's always a challenge for us because we're busy people. Senator Westrom.
So, Madam Chair, and just Representative Scriba's point, and I guess to my earlier comments, I wasn't suggesting at all that we change the RFP from one year to another. So just so that's clear, there's no reason we can't put the RFP out, I'd say as early in January as possible, and let it sit open for an extra 2 or 4 weeks till the end of April. I don't think that's of any concern. It's just a matter of when do we do the business and review and carve out, 2 weeks of 3-day meetings back to back. Coming right out of a legislative session. We had a special session this year in June, and that just adds to it as well. Election year, primaries, you just don't know all of those things and what's going to happen. And so I'm trying to find a sweet spot in the calendar that also doesn't get too late in the fall. We used to do these in October, just for anybody that hasn't been following this very closely. The presentations on non-election years were in October, but we still got the final bill out in December for recommending to the legislature. And just Representative Scriba, your point, anybody that applies really has to wait till the following legislative session either way for final approval, and that usually happens not till April or May, typically May of the following year. So all of this is just kind of process in between, and so that's why I'm trying to find a happy medium of what can get done with staff. We do have 2 new staff, so hopefully that helps us. I know it's a mad scramble, and summers are very filled in my lifestyle, and I think a lot of other people. And coming out of session as legislators, it is just a tough schedule when we push them in June and July, when realistically the legislature is not going to approve them till the following year anyways. And so going back to what we used to do, October is not what I'm suggesting, but post-primary would be an idea, and the idea of summer's over after Labor Day. Typically people's schedules kind of change back to more routine. And so that's where I'm just trying to float the idea of maybe that first half of September, we could just have those presentations. Everything else could be done in June and July with evaluations and us getting together and narrowing the list down. And then that's I guess what I was trying to bring forward as an idea. Trying to figure out where's the sweet spot.
Director Nash, did you want to respond to that? I'm thinking, Senator Westrom, that as has been noted, moving those all into September compresses the time more than the staff can complete the process if they move it that far down. But I'll let any staff want to respond to that, or should we go to Representative Jordan? Mr. Varian?
Chair Albrecht, members, in terms of kind of that sweet spot, we recognize that the June one, the early one, was impacting the commission's ability to kind of do their work at the forefront. The middle option really was kind of representing a sweet spot in terms of balancing our staff's workload and members' workload as it relates to the commission body of work. The late option that is before us was trying to kind of take into account a little bit of balance of wanting to have the summers, but also recognizing that the late option here is already a couple of weeks short of what staff have determined to be kind of the minimum amount of time that we need to do the body of work after recommendations are made. And so the further back we push the presentations, that is just compressing our time to do that body of work afterwards that much more. And to echo Director Nash earlier, previously the workload was much smaller. So that body of work years ago to have the later presentations, there were fewer projects to work with. And that was no easy task. The other piece of that is that it was often that the late presentations was before a late legislative session or start. So there was a little more buffer in there if more time was needed to get the bill ready or get work plans ready. So the three options here, we really did try to take into account a number of those things. I do know with the August presentation schedule, there previous discussions around school starting, members that work in the school system. So there are pros and cons to all of these. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Jordan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is possible to get the evaluation done. I would recommend bringing binders with you when you go to conference committee, because you'll inevitably, especially for House members, you'll inevitably be waiting on the Senate forever, and you can review a lot of projects while the senators are showing up late. Just throwing that out there. But is it possible, we have a lot of downtime on the floor. Is it possible to get the project proposals earlier? If the issue is the evaluation time, and I understand that if we, moving up the RFP for this earlier one, I agree. July, the idea of coming to the Capitol in July makes me want to cry. But if it's possible to get the books earlier, we do have legislative breaks that have not been established yet. We could push our leadership for that. But getting the books earlier and the project proposals earlier, I think would help ease some of that burden. It is hard to review all of that when, you're trying to come up with a education budget or a natural resources budget or an agriculture budget. But I do think kind of understanding that, is it possible to get the project proposals earlier or figure out a way to just have more time to evaluate and also have this earlier June, July date so we can, work or campaign or maybe enjoy your summer? Yeah. What's that word? Vacation? Yeah, all of those things. Is that possible?
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And honestly, sometimes elections don't really kick off until the 1st of July. I mean, full speed. Knock on wood. But I'm going to let Director Nash respond to that, whether or not the books can come out earlier than what is the first one there, which is early May.
I think I want to defer to
Michael Varian
on this one.
Chair Albrecht and members. So in terms of the RFP on the three options that we have here, with the early, middle, and late, we did shift release date, close date on that to kind of align with that. So an option could be to use the RFP dates from the early option. So open up the RFP earlier, close it earlier, and then use those dates with the middle or late option. And so that would get a little more time at the beginning for members, but then put those presentation dates maybe in July instead of, or July or August instead of the early on.
Can you say that again? Or maybe,
Do you want me to
Yeah.
summarize? Michael?
Interpret that for
Yeah.
him.
If we choose the middle or late option, yes, there would be opportunity to give you a little bit more time with the books. But not the first option. The first options would be taking
already
time out of proposers' time to write proposals.
Commissioner Beaman.
Thank you.
Am I right on that, Michael?
Yes, you're,
Yeah.
Chair Albright, members, yes, you're correct on that. You know, the only other thing would be to get the RFP out sooner.
The
But-
RFP out sooner and the deadline late, earlier in the year, and then
You mean
staff
like-
has time.
Yeah,
Year
I mean,
still?
yeah, like if you were to try and get it out in December or shorten the amount of time, the window that proposers have.
Yeah.
Right now, we kind of shoot for about 3 months. So,
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Commissioner Beaman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, well, one, I would say if you can get a month for review, if we have another 400 proposals, no matter whether it's 1, 2, or 3, that's just so many to go through that having the proposals for a month would be very, very helpful. And then second, I'm hearing clearly, and I really don't want to try to strong arm staff that they can do anything if we push it later, the presentation's later than August, maybe one more week we could strong arm. But I understand that's a lot of work after that they have to do. And I just don't think it's realistic to keep trying to say, please, can we do
Mhm.
that? So that leaves, I think, legislators really to talk about what fits. You have a unique set of demands between finishing session, possibly, whether there's a special session, I don't know, and campaigning and that. So between the three, while all of us members have different things that will come up at different times of the summer and conflicts, I think you probably have a more unique set. So figuring out between the three what fits you might make sense.
Thank you. And for me, I personally prefer the earlier option because I want to get it done and off my mind and then not have this hanging over me for the rest of the summer. So that's kind of my preference. But did you have your hand up, Senator Green? And then I'll go to Commissioner Reese.
Yeah, I just had a question for Director Nash. You mentioned that you want to get it done before the first of the year, and I get that because members change. But the bill itself, we may change some members, or we don't usually change a lot. And the new member could also go over the bill before they decided whether or not they wanted to vote for it. And the bills never really come up till close to the end of session anyway. So if the bill wasn't specifically prepared in its form for voting on before first of the year, probably wouldn't be the end of the world. If I heard you right, the only downplay to getting it done before the first is the changing of the members of the commission.
Director Nash?
Madam Chair, members, yeah, I mean, that is an interesting concept of having a new member come in and vote on a bill that they haven't heard any of the presentations for or read the proposals for. So that would be an interesting idea to think about. But I think also I would say that there's the revisor's office that we need to be just aware of, and that this is one of the larger bills that goes through the legislative session. And as closer we get to the legislative session, it's harder to set aside a large amount of time to focus on doing one bill, when there are all sorts of different bills coming at you. So we do try to get it done, and we have really, I mean, the last several years, we've had requests to have it be ready by the first day, so it can be dropped on the first day. So I think it does get recent experience is that it does get introduced and it does get heard fairly early on. The final vote may not happen till the end of legislative session, but at least, I mean, I know the bodies are different, but there's been activity towards the beginning of it's been the first bill heard even in the last couple years in at least one of the chambers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Green?
Yeah, thank you. And I get that, but I will tell you this about the revisor's office. They put together bills in a matter of hours that are 1,000 pages at the end of the session. They're pretty amazing people. And so, so I don't know if I'd worry too much about that, but I'm just saying if we can't come to a conclusion, I think the biggest thing here is the new member might have to vote on something that they didn't put together. Doesn't mean they can't read it. I mean, I read bills all the time that I don't even see until they're a few days from coming from the floor, that they almost come out of nowhere. So I don't know if that's a real issue, but just food for thought.
Commissioner Reese?
And fortunately, we've been able to have forms, but you can only push numbers of ours as well, is to make it a public form. And so that's consideration also. I was forced through the 11th, but
The 11th. Second Tuesday in August.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you. Will you actually have quorums during that time frame and for some of these other important meetings?
Thank you. Any other advice on the calendar? Senator Westrom?
So, Madam Chair, to kind of segment this a little bit, to me, I don't see is there a reason, Mike, January, I think 7th was the early proposal for releasing the RFP, 21st and the 2nd and the February 4th and the 3rd. Is there a reason we wouldn't just release the RFP on January 7th or as soon as possible under any scenario? Because I think it's only beneficial to the people, the public trying to apply to have more time than less, or why would we shorten the window on any of them? And then is it April 29th that you're asking for them to close on all three, if I'm remembering right?
Michael?
Chair Albrecht and Senator Westrom members, the three options, the RFP release, we were trying to keep the amount of time between the release and the close and all of the steps similar. So there's with the middle and late option, we certainly could release the RFP earlier. One part of shifting that RFP release was to just shorten the whole process a little bit, because that has been a question that folks have asked. And so, but no, there's no reason we couldn't release the RFP in early
Senator Westrom?
And I guess that's why, I mean, I just think hearing from folks that apply, some of them just learn about it. And so I think, some of them learn about it because they come down to the Capitol during session, and I'll tell them about it and they'll check into it. Well, if we have it closed in March or early April, it makes a difference versus later April. They just have more time. So I would advocate that we just have that window as big as possible, because I don't think that's an issue for anybody other than when do we get the books. And to Representative Jordan's point, and that's kind of the barrel we're all over. She doesn't like to come to the Capitol in July, and nor do I. And when you've been here for 5 months and you're got all kinds of things at home and business that have been put on the back burner, and then you have to immerse into this. And so I'm also with the chair. I mean, ideally, it'd be nice to get done by July 4th if you're going to do it early, because then you can kind of move on with your summer. But I don't know if we can have those two ideas come together. The election is an issue. And so what I'm sensing is there's no issue about having an early release of the RFP and going to later part of April. I think that's probably good all around. Others can weigh in, but I think for the groups that are actually going to apply, I think they would appreciate the longer window generally is more effective for everybody. But then when do we get it? I think at a minimum, having a review date by June 10th or so would be reasonable. It seems to me on the second proposal, if that's where people want to go, we could probably try to have more of those meetings done right before or after the 4th of July. But before, if we went out to the 10th instead of the 1st, does that still give you room to compress? We could meet the following week, pick them, and then the following 2 weeks could be presentations if that's what people want to prefer. I still think I would like to go post-primary with those presentations, maybe starting the week of whatever that is, the 17th of August instead of the early part of August. If somebody's in a primary, they're not going to show up. I'll just tell you that right now. Even by Zoom, it might not be possible. So that'd be one idea. My preference would still be to go land right after Labor Day, but if that's too complicated and not enough support, then I'm just trying to find a hybrid. But I think if we could, two of the three matters, I think we could resolve, and I would propose that we have the RFP be January 7th and close April 29th, and we have the evaluations back from commission by June 10th. Would be my motion to get that started, and then we can decide on the presentation dates, if that would help us move things along, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I heard you. RFP, or maybe staff can say it back.
I heard RFP open January 9th and closed April 29th, and then having evaluation one back from the commission by June 10th. Is that what I understood?
January 7th, but whatever days on the first day, first proposal, I don't recall it. I'm just going from memory.
The 7th.
7th.
And I'm going to go to Senator Green, but I'm not sure it's helpful to staff to widen that RFP, lengthen that time from the 7th to the end of April, and then try and turn that around for us to review those. I know that one of the other late dates here is March 27th or even April 8th. Is there a reason you chose April 29th?
I thought that's what the date was, but maybe Mike, can you review what the three closing dates are? I thought it looked similar. Emerging issues looked like an earlier day, but that should only be.
Mr. Varian?
Chair Albrecht and members, the early option has a March 11th close date. The middle option has a March 27th close date. The late option is an April 8th.
April 8th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, then I would propose January 7th to April 8th. That's, I guess.
And then have those
Have the evaluations back by
from
June 10th.
And so when would members receive the materials?
Whatever staff says is for early to mid-May. I think May 10th timeframe, I think would probably be helpful, but.
It says mid-May. If we were to receive them on June 15th, we would receive if we were to evaluate them by June 15th, we would receive them mid-May. So there again, once you move that RFP date down, then it's harder for them to turn those books around for us by the first part of May or mid-May. So
I guess Mike maybe can answer that. Is May 10th a reasonable date if we close on April 8th?
So
Mr. Varian?
Chair Albrecht and members, specifics on the dates, if I'm following correctly, it really sounds like you're proposing something similar to either the middle or the late option, but just opening the RFP sooner is really what we're doing. Because we already, with what you're proposing, we already have kind of a April close date, and then members getting their books sometime, in May there, and then that June. So the late option, it would be like a June 25th meeting. The middle option is also a June 25th meeting. So it sounds like you're really proposing to just open up the RFP sooner in terms of those specific dates.
Thank you. I have a question from Senator Green before I go back to you, okay, Senator Westrom? Senator Green.
Yeah, I have a question too, and so probably to the staff mostly, but just to re-clarify, when does the RFP open and close under current? Currently, like last year, when did it happen?
Last year it opened.
Chair Albrecht and members. So last year, the request for proposal went out on January 8th, and March 19th is when it closed.
Okay, and Madam Chair, the point of that is we had to have over 400 proposals. And the longer we leave that open, the more proposals we're gonna get. And some of those proposals that we got actually shouldn't have been there. I mean, and so I think if someone is serious, I hate to disagree with my colleague there, but if we're gonna be doing that, we're gonna have to start tightening up what even moves forward to get in the book in the first place. Because, I read through all of them, and I don't just read the caption, I read what they're doing. And I think if someone is serious about getting money, you're giving away free money. I mean, people are going to apply. If they're serious, they're going to be on the ball. They're going to find out about this. And so I'm not really sure that when we're asking you to turn stuff over quicker, if it's going to be beneficial to give you more stuff to turn over quicker.
Thank you.
That's just a opinion, but.
Thanks for that observation. I appreciate that. I agree. I think our RFP process is open long enough. We're doing a better job, I think, of letting folks know and organizations and communities know that the RFP is open. And I think for that reason, we've, as you mentioned, had many more applications, and I'm not sure that lengthening that process is helpful, and it would, I think, put much more strain on staff than is necessary. Other comments? So,
Madam Chair.
yeah, Senator Westrom.
Given that comment, I'd withdraw my motion, and for discussion, I just might suggest maybe we go with option 2.
All right.
That
We have a suggestion.
I'd move option 2 at this point for
Option 2,
discussion.
which is the middle compromise. And I want to ask if anyone has comments about that. Seeing none, I do. Senator Burke.
I have to think about option 2, but I just wanna, I've been quiet throughout this time, but I'm with you on it. Just concur, chair by chair. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Others? So staff had any other comments on option 2? Mr. Varian, did you have anything else to say? No? Senator Westrom?
Madam Chair, I just moved this so we kind of start putting
Discussion.
But
Yep.
I know, discussion, your comment earlier, I think, has some weight. So if we're going to get the evaluations in by early half of June, and there's some way to move up some of the presentations to get them started before the 4th of July, that might make sense. So I'm open to your discussion, your thoughts. You had made that comment earlier, other people's, but we got to get to wrap this up, but
Yeah.
this is a bit of a.
Well, thank you. For me, I do understand the crunch time at the end of the legislative session, notwithstanding Representative Jordan's suggestion of how you might find time in your day to review your projects. but it is a quick turnaround. I note that we have 6 weeks or 6 days scheduled for presentations, and last year, I think we accomplished it in 4 days. So we're being very generous with the presentation schedule here, which I think is where we may be able to save time and the reality of what we actually are doing next year. So I just want to throw that out there. You know, maybe there's an opportunity on that first early option to move this back to 5 days, or even, I'm not opposed to having, you know, a split day where we have proposals through 3 o'clock, then we have an hour off, and then we go into the evening. I don't know if that works for staff, but you know, if I'm going to come down here and be in the cities, I like to have a full day. So those might also be some options to tweak the presentation schedule a bit so that we have fewer days of presentation, and then maybe we can squash down when the member evaluations are due. Instead of June 1st, maybe go to June 5th or something. I'm just trying to figure out how could we go with what we've kind of had and yet not have to, you know, upset our entire July and our entire August or something like that. So I would tend to prefer tweaking the first one a bit than not. Other comments? Becca, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to say that I think that's a really good observation about, we are pretty conservative. We put several days on for presentations. And so what has happened is that at that first meeting, like on June 10th in the first scenario, early scenario, you know now how many proposals are before you and how many presentations you want. And this gives you flexibility about whether you want to, you know, do it right before and after a weekend so that members just travel down here and stay down here, or if you backload it or front load it. So I agree that that's a good option.
Okay.
I mean, a good observation that there's
Mhm.
flexibility there.
There are, yeah, some tweaks we could make to the presentation schedule. Commissioner Beaman.
Thank you, Manager. One other just observation with the early option, if we're looking at that, there's also the part about after those presentations, when is the evaluation being, you know, completed? And you've got it here as member evaluation number 2 due July 8th, which means all of our follow-up after presentations is over 4th of July weekend.
Right.
That was, we
And that-
pointed that out.
Yeah,
at the
you did
short-
point it out, and I just want to highlight that again.
Yeah.
That really gonna be real. So if we're you know, if there's an adjustment, think about that as well. Maybe
Mhm.
we push things a little later. I don't know.
That's a very good observation. It's not good. Yeah. There's work after the presentations and even the harder work sometimes. Senator Westrom.
Madam Chair, Representative Jordan, I'd solicit any insight from you.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Knowing your feelings are, I concur with your feelings in the summer. And I'm not, even though I move it, I'm not guaranteeing I'll be here for quorum, Madam Chair.
And
either.
if you,
So,
will you cry like Representative Jordan will if she has to come to the Capitol in the summer?
I'll keep it to
Representative Jordan.
myself if I do. Anyways, what are your thoughts, Representative Jordan? Because it's kind of a
I have thoughts.
darn if you do, darn if you don't type of scenario, I think. Go ahead.
Yes, Madam Chair, Senator Westrom. Yeah, I was just whispering to Mike that they're all bad dates. And my thoughts are that I would prefer the early option with some of the cushioning built in that Chair Albrecht suggested. It is a lot to deal with to read through these proposals, but it's a lot no matter when. And I guess at this point, if I'm already here looking at binders all night anyway, I already have to be working. I may as well. I would prefer the earliest option. It seems like the least problematic option, and I would move it if people are okay with that and just accept that it's all rough, whether it's, you know, the reviewing binders and the crunch after session, or trying to review binders, you know, when you're working at your day job to try to pay your mortgage. So they're all problematic. I think my thoughts at this moment are the earlier option with the plea to staff to get us the books as soon as you can, pretty please. I don't know. I know Representative Scraba has thoughts as well.
And I also, I just want to comment, I do believe we have Senator Westrum's motion for the second option on the floor before we go to you.
It's amendable, Madam Chair, but go ahead.
Yeah, Representative Scraba.
I sit on bonding committee, and when we go bonding, it's 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's what we do not this year, it was 7 to 7 only. But I'm looking at your dates, June 25th to July 2nd. Well, the 3rd, most federal state employees are gone on the 3rd before the 4th. So, you know, where are we there? If we're going to start in June, the 25th, that just, I'm driving here Thursday and then going home and coming. I'm staying here the whole week. I mean, I got 4-hour drive. I'd much rather come here on a Monday, work me from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Just keep them coming. And then when we're done, we're done.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm staff. I'm sorry you have to work that hard like we do, but I would much rather be here less time, you know, here physically.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. Maybe not 8, but 9.
Yeah, but my point is all of them are broken in, you know, kind of Thursday, Friday,
Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday off, and that's fine, but
I agree with you. Thanks for those comments, because I too, because we have to drive a long ways. When we come down here, it'd be nice to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and not a Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. That's in your head, maybe that makes sense, but in the reality for me, that doesn't. Director Nash and then Representative Jordan.
I was just, comment came from staff, very importantly, that the last several years, or last year, we did proposal presentations fully remotely, so no driving. No driving allowed.
And
no driving.
It was all remote.
As a follow-up to that, if we do the early option, I will volunteer to be the member in St. Paul. I cannot promise that for the other 2 options. I'm just saying, looking at my calendar for next year, I'm not trying to, you know,
leverage,
but this is one that I can volunteer to be the designated survivor or whatever. But I can't make that promise for the later dates, just given I don't know what my election calendar looks like, what my work calendar looks like.
Thank you, Representative Jordan. Commissioner Reese, and then let's kind of tie this in a bow.
Right. Trying to work towards that, Madam Chair. I would like you to consider the meetings on the first early option to 8. Doing that the early option, and then if you switch over to the second page, 9, well, actually after 8, use the middle option, because then you addressing Commissioner Beaman's concern and others likely that turning in your scores the 8th after 4th of July weekend is going to be very challenging in itself. This gives you a little more time, and then you get the later times there. The August 20 proposals are due 22nd, or member evaluation due July 22nd. The LCCMR meeting is August 5th, and seems like that might be a reasonable approach. Then you get the main work done earlier before the 4th, and then you give a little time for the 4th, and then you can finish the rest up later on.
So just to clarify, thank you for that comment. You're saying online 2 through 8, use the first option.
Well,
Is that what you're saying through
yeah, it'd be
meeting
first
number 2
meeting.
through 8?
Well,
Use the first
yes.
option? Is that what you're saying? And then for the member evaluation and then the allocation discussion, use the second option.
That's correct. So it'd be below 8, the row below 8 on.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just going to ask, is that something that would work for staff? Are you confused, members?
Let's recap what that would result.
Do you want to go ahead and restate that?
Yes,
Commissioner Reed?
so What it would mean is you're using early option, you would have proposals, would discuss proposals would be on June 10th. You'd have June 25th through July 2nd would be the presentations. And then that would be.
Member evaluation.
Yeah, member.
22nd.
Yep, exactly.
On July 22nd, August.
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Correct. Thank you. Thank you, Representative.
Is that something that the staff could work with? Mr. Varian?
Chair Albrecht and members, yes, that is something that we could take the first half of the early option and the last half of the middle option and piece them together.
All right. So Senator Westrom, are you willing to incorporate that into your motion?
Maybe.
Or would you?
I just want to clarify something. The turnaround date for members evaluation, if I'm following this correctly, you'd still be under a June 1st deadline for evaluation, right? And a 10th.
Yeah, that's true. That's right.
That is the real sticking point. I've done this too many years and I've sat up and ruined my Memorial Day weekend trying to figure this out, and I'm not willing to do it anymore. And anybody that hasn't been on long enough, I'm trying to save you from what you're gonna not always like your life. You're gonna wonder how much you like your life right then. So my point, not being too dramatic, is what could we push that out and still work with that? The option 2 is a June 15th deadline. I'm not saying we have to do June 15th. I was trying to propose June 10th. We could then come back. So I'm just floating this idea, incorporating into Mike's suggestion here, which I think is a good one. Instead of June 1st, say June 10th, and then the follow-up meeting could be like June 17th, which would still give you about a week to get presentations invited and scheduled. But
So thank you for that.
is that something that could be doable, Mike?
I'm gonna.
What would be the latest you could push the member evaluation to be done and then a follow-up meeting?
Thank you, Senator Westrom. It looks as though we currently on all the options, there are 10 days between when members' evaluations have to be in and when we have the allocation meeting, and that's the amount of time that staff has built into these schedules. But let's go to
And
Mr.
Madam
Varian
Chair-
and ask him the question of whether or not that would.
Okay, I'll hear from them and then I might do a little pushback, but okay. So remember, we have an automated system now too, staff, so it should be faster, not slower.
So
We need member scores in on time, though, I would say.
Like the email response. Mr. Varian.
Chair Albrecht and members, there is a little room in terms of like a day or two between these dates to maintain enough time for staff and for members. The early option, those early dates are really kind of we're at the minimum of amount of time in between these options. So a day or two shift, maybe, but in order to really get, 3, 4, 5 a week to go from June 1st to June 10th, at that point, we're really shifting from the early option to the middle option in terms of, because everything else would have to shift accordingly.
Senator Westrom.
So Madam Chair, Mike, remind me the date on the first and second option we're talking June 15th as the second option, and then when would the evaluation be? About the 25th or the meeting?
So on the second option, the member evaluation would be due on June 15th, and the selection meeting would be on June 25th.
Correct. And so I'm just saying, can we tighten that up to 7 days instead of 10 days? And if we can shave off on the first date from the 15th to the 10th, and then be back on the 17th, you still would have a week you'd have a week to get it done and that's what's been done in the past. So I don't I guess I'm just wondering what would be the time? You said a day or two. Is the 10th and the 17th too close together?
So if we do that with the early option, then we don't have enough time after the selections to coordinate and schedule all of the presentation meetings. And so at that point, if we're shifting from the 1st to the 10th, then the whole schedule has to shift accordingly. And at that point, we're shifting to the middle option at that point. So
Commissioner Reese.
Madam Chair, I believe there's been several comments requesting longer days. And so to that point that Michael just mentioned, isn't it possible to drop the June 25th, June 26th presentation days and then slide your meeting accordingly to give you the 10 days that you need? And then if you're able to do that, you're able to move the member evaluation due date kind of it's the same amount of days plus your 2 or 3 days that or 1 or 2 days that you had mentioned. So you could go to the end of the week, Friday, June, whatever that date that is, slide the LCCMR meeting date the same amount of days, and then take off those 2 dates and have longer meeting dates.
Are you suggesting, thank you for that, are you suggesting member evaluations would be done by the 15th? The LCCMR meeting would be 10 days later on June 25th, and the presentations would then be
June 26th?
It'd be a hybrid of that. No. No.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you said? I missed it. I think Commissioner Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the question is about the member evaluation date, which is June 1st.
Yep.
And what's blocking that from being later is the presentation dates, essentially.
Mhm.
So the proposal is just have the presentation June 29th through July 2nd.
I
In
see.
doing so, the latest date you could have the meeting and still have that 10 days would be June 19th. And then for June 19th, the latest that you could put in the proposals would be due is June 9th. I don't know if those are Sundays or.
Okay.
But that's kind of what I'm proposing is
Mhm.
you drop 2 of the presentation days and just have longer days which was commented many times.
Okay, so member evaluations due on the 9th of June, the meeting to discuss proposals on the 19th. Is that a weekday? And then presentations the following week on the 29th through the 2nd.
June.
Let me just check the calendar on that. You were looking at your calendar, was the 19th a weekday?
Let me weigh in and maybe you don't need to check the calendar.
Okay. Senator Westrom.
Madam Chair, I think several of us have to get going.
Yeah.
I would suggest we adopt the motion subject to staff coming back with recommendations of how they can fit in meetings after our member evaluations in June, consistent with the first proposal.
Thank you.
And then December, we could just adopt that idea, let everybody look at it a little bit. And I would say if we could focus on June 9th, even June 8th is a Monday, I believe, a week from the first, June 8th or June 9th. June 9th, I think would be better for everybody. But what we would adopt then is Commissioner Reese's proposal. I would accept that as a friendly amendment, subject to June 9th being the member evaluation reports are in, and subject to staff coming back with a recommendation of how to make the calendar work consistent with proposal 1 at our next meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. Senator Herb?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll support the motion that if there's a second, I support Senator Westrom. I also want this time to shout out earlier where Representative Jordan said she was standing this, she did it last time too, so, yeah.
We appreciated that.
Yep, thank you.
So we have and Senator Herr is seconding that motion. Do I need a second? No. No, I don't need a second. But he's supporting that motion. Any other comments in support or opposition? Seeing none, staff are clear on what the motion is and commission members are clear on what the motion is. Let's call the roll.
Albright,
Yes.
Albright, yes. Her,
Yes.
yes. Jordan,
Yes.
Jordan, yes. Beeman,
Yes.
Beeman, yes. Faber. Fisher is excused. Green?
Yes.
Green, yes. Hedstrom?
Hedstrom, yes.
Hedstrom, yes. Heinzman? Langseth? Lilly? McEwen?
Done.
Moore?
More yes. Thank you, Jordan.
Moore, yes. Putnam is excused. Reese?
Reese, yes.
Reese, yes.
Graba, yes.
Scrabba, yes. Westrom?
Yes.
Westrom, yes.
That
Currently
motion-
there are 10 yes, 0 no.
That motion prevails. The last thing on our agenda is public testimony. We have no one in person and we have posted one letter online. With that, I will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you for staying an extra hour.